And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. I'm Vince D'Addario. That's Ryan Roberts, and we'll just get this out of the way right off the bat. Ryan, things are going to look a little different today. We messed up a little bit, and we're in a different account for StreamYard, and so we're kind of back to the basics. And this is what you're going to get the close-up view of. You're going to get the Brady Bunch view of us today.
You'll get a duck on my forehead at some points too as I reposition my head. So man, we're back to the roots of StreamYard right now.
Yes, these are the roots, man. This is where we used to be. That countdown for all the OGs out there. That used to be our countdown before we made the official Irish Breakdown countdown. So we're touching back to the old days, man. And so we're gonna bring you guys right along with us. But nothing changes. We're obviously live on YouTube. We've got, everything we normally have. It's Monday, so that means we are going to focus on recruiting. And Ryan, it is a fun day to focus on recruiting when you are less than 24 hours after what can be arguably described as one of the biggest surprises of the recruiting season in a positive way for Notre Dame, with Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa officially committing to the University of Notre Dame at linebacker. And he was the number one guy on the board for Notre Dame as far as linebacker position. They let it play out. They listened to Irish Breakdown. They let it play out. It worked out well in their favor. I have to say, watching it live on that other recruiting services, YouTube, and watching the chat was pretty comical. I did enjoy it. There was one guy with his sole mission was to bash us, which I thought was hilarious. And nobody was even communicating with him. He was just throwing out a bunch of crap. And then all the Ohio State fans, and they just lost their minds last night. And that was fun to watch too. But it was a great night. If you're a Notre Dame fan, it was a great night.
It was the best thing ever, Vince, is this was a complete coincidence, is that I was scheduled this morning to be on an Ohio State podcast to talk NFL draft. I wasn't even going to talk recruiting.
Really?
And then of course, they opened up with, Ohio State's not in a great mood today because of Kyngstonn not committing to Ohio State. So incredible timing, because I had that thing scheduled for a couple weeks out. This wasn't just this morning. They're like, hey, can you hop on? It was something. So, man, great day to be a Notre Dame supporter. Great day to be a part of the Notre Dame program. Obviously a massive win. I know we're going to, throw some shade at some points for sure, because it's fun and it's awesome that Notre Dame is able to finally win a big battle against Ohio State, because it has happened the other way too often, obviously, over the last few years. But give Notre Dame all the credit. They fought back multiple times in this recruitment. Throughout the majority of the last 2 years, Ohio State has been the leader for Kyngstonn. He was. And then also recently-ish, USC was kind of the perceived leader for Kyngstonn for a few days. And Notre Dame spent more time in second or third place in this recruitment than they did in first. That's just the end-all be-all to it. And they were able to outlast and were able to obviously make it happen at the end. And a lot of it came down to Kingstonn's natural beliefs and his spirituality and his religious background. But either way, Notre Dame was able to get a big one. And now we can move on to 2025, which no one wants to do all the time. So.
Well, and that's the thing. And I will say, from a personal standpoint, talking about the 25 class is just surreal to me. I've got a kid who's in the 25 class. That's just, I shouldn't have a kid that's old enough to be recruited to college. That's not how this works. But we are talking about the 25 class, and, with the commitment yesterday of KVA, it's obviously easier to say his initials. But with his commitment to Notre Dame, that's the third straight class that has been arguably elite in the linebacker class for Notre Dame. At the very least, very good. And now they turn the page to 25, which, from all accounts, specifically yours, because I talk to you about recruiting when I have any kind of question, this is about as loaded and deep a linebacker class as that there's been in recent memory. And the best part is a bunch of these guys have already been on campus, and they're only halfway through their high school career, which is amazing. Yes.
Well, Vince, people asked me already, and I wrote it in a little bit of I have a piece coming out that's going to kind of highlight basically every player that we're talking about today. And the thing that I started out with is, if you asked me to give you 2 words to the 2025 class, one would be length and the other would be versatility. Like, this is a long, athletic group. 26 players have been offered at linebacker in the 2025 class already by Notre Dame, which is an absurd number. And I know that there's going to be some people throwing shade at Al Golden. I completely get it, of, casting a wide net and seeing who can get type of thing. But also, there's not a player that Notre Dame has offered at linebacker where I'm like, I don't know why they would offer that kid. Like, I'm not really sure about that one. Like, there are 26 legitimately good to elite football players in the linebacker board for 2025. And it's going to be really exciting because, I think that the tide is going to continue, because Notre Dame is, thinking back to this time last year compared to where we are now, Notre Dame's in a lot better place with a lot of these linebackers than they were last year with any linebacker at this time. So they've already made late headway in this class to really get off to a good start. We're talking about the numbers, obviously, today. So the numbers, kind of to touch on those because we need to, is we expect the number to be 3 again next year. We've had 3 straight classes of 4 in 2022, 3 in 2023, and 3 in 2024. Now look at the 2025. We expect 3. I think that we are going to have a similar formula to what we had in 2024. We had 1 true rover in Teddy Rizak that is committed to the University of Notre Dame. And then you had 2 inside linebackers that can kind of play a little bit of Will and a little bit of Mike each. I think ultimately Kyngstonn ends up as the Mike, and Bodie Cahoon is probably the Will early on. But regardless, those kids have some versatility to play multiple spots. And then you got Teddy, who's more of the pure rover that maybe can move inside eventually, depending on how things are. So I think you'll have a similar formula of, think 3 linebackers in the class, think of 2 true inside linebackers, and then think of a guy that could start as a rover early on.
So do you think they could balloon to 4? I mean, you're saying probably 3. Since this is such a deep class, could they balloon to 4? Do you see that being a possibility?
I think it depends on who the 4 is, because there's a couple of players that we'll talk about today. One is Justin Hill out of the state of Ohio, where if they get Justin Hill, Vince, he could take the Joshua Burnham route of eventually being a Viper. Like, he's that type of guy. He is 6'4", 215 pounds already. He is going to be probably 6'4.5", 6'5" before too long, and probably 230 plus pounds. So he could be that Viper type. So there could be a world down the line if, let's say, hypothetically, Notre Dame has a commitment from Justin Hill, and they're like, I want to take a 4th linebacker because I think Hill's going to be a Viper. That could be a world where you get 4 technically, but obviously the designation would still be that you have 3 linebackers in that class and 1 Viper.
No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because I was talking to Brian prior to the show, and when I found out this is going to be a linebacker focused show, obvious reasons, and he starts telling me how deep the class is and all this stuff, and he's watching all this film, which I know you're doing as well. And he's like, I've watched 15 guys film. He goes, every one of those 15 guys would be a take if I was at Notre Dame. It's like, wow, okay, that this is a deep class, is what you're saying. Like, that's. Yes, are they casting a wide net? They've got over 25 offers out there for the 25 class, a list that you can check out over at irishbreakdown.com. But yes, a wide net, but at the same time, there's so much talent that if you're not in on all of these guys, then you could miss out. And that's obviously not the way you want to do things. So speaking of not missing out, there's a whole list of guys that have already been on campus that I don't want to say they're the primary targets for Notre Dame, but they've already been here. And I believe you told me that this group, there's like for a lot of these guys, there's like an innate love for Notre Dame already. Like, it's already there that Notre Dame just needs to build on and, enhance and do all of those things.
Yeah, no, it really, I think that's a great way to put it. There is, we had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 linebackers that we're going to talk about in this first group of guys that have been on campus already in varying ways. I would say 5 or 6. Notre Dame's probably the leader, and the other guys are in the top group 4. So there's no linebacker that we're talking about that has been to campus that I would say is on the outside looking in of having Notre Dame in their top group. Like, that's kind of how I see it right now. I mean, we're going to talk about one player in particular that I think he's about to visit for his 3rd time this offseason, right? So, like, they're doing a good job, man. They're doing a really good job of selling. And obviously, there was some missteps in 2024. I hope that there's some learning that's happened, obviously, and they've been able to get in with these guys early because, in theory, Notre Dame should be a really good linebacker recruiting staff, which it has been for the most part, right? You have Marcus
Sure.
Freeman, obviously. You have Al Golden, who coached linebackers in a Super Bowl. I mean, like, that's pretty legitimate. You have Max Bulla, the new linebacker coach who played at Michigan State and was on Alabama staff over the last few years. You have legitimate knowledge at the linebacker position. So, yes, there were some missteps in 2024, but I really think that the early indication is that 2025 is a much more concerted and cooperative approach is kind of how I would entail.
I like it. So let's jump into these guys. I've got a list of names here in front of me. I don't want to butcher anybody's name, but we've got Noah McHale, we've got Anthony Saka, Dominic Hulock, Brett Clatterbaugh, Landon McComber, Carlton Smith, and Josiah Kia. That's the first group that we're going to kind of focus in on. Hopefully I didn't do too bad with their names if they're listening.
That was great, man.
It's all those years as a PA announcer. You just kind of pray. But no, this group, they've all been on campus. This is an elite group, man. Let's break these kids down a little bit, where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the conversation starts with Noah McHale, and that's where I really want to start. He is a linebacker out of the state of California, 6'3", 210 plus pounds already. Vince, he was the first linebacker that was offered by Notre Dame. He was offered during his sophomore year, which is very early for the team, for the program in general. He is, I know Brian Driscoll especially loves this kid. He's a physical, downhill, can run, really athletic striker. Like, there is a lot to like about Noah McHale. He's been on campus this offseason. When he was offered last year in 2022, he also called Notre Dame immediately his dream school when he was offered.
Wow.
Like, that was his dream school growing up. So I think Notre Dame, when you're starting with Noah McHale, it's not going to be an easy one. Notre Dame is definitely in his top group. There is no doubt about it right now. But, I mean, when you look at his offer list, Alabama, Georgia, USC, everybody.
Where's he from? Where's he out of?
He's a California kid.
Okay.
So I think the hope is that you continue the California momentum that you have right now. I mean, we talked a lot about Kyngstonn, obviously, but you just got a wide receiver on Friday that's out of the state of California as well. So you're rolling in California a little bit, and I hope, and for Notre Dame's sake, that Noah McHale may be a part of that next wave of California players, because he's excellent, man. He's a really talented player, has an affinity for Notre Dame. Notre Dame needs to stay on this one and be consistent. If they are, I think they will be in it till the end with Noah McHale.
So you said he's a downhill guy, et cetera. Yeah. Like, does he project inside?
Yeah, he's an inside guy.
Okay.
I mean, he's athletic enough that if he needed to play Rover, he could, but he is absolutely a Mike Will type player at the next level. I mean, he's 6'3". Again, it's like we're talking about a kid that just finished up his sophomore year is already 6'3", 210 plus pounds. Like, he's going to be 235 pounds in the blink of an eye. So that's kind of what we're looking like with McHale.
Those guys never walked in the door when I was coaching high school. I just want to throw that out there. That's I wish I was some of these high school coaches.
I sent my buddy who does NFL draft scouting, and I sent him the huddle highlight tape of Kyngstonn yesterday, and I was like, this kid was 6'3", 230 pounds as a high school junior. Just imagine that, man. Like, I can't even fathom that. I really can't. So, yes, they are definitely making them different than when they used to make them.
No kidding.
When I played. I mean, I'm only 31, but it's like they made them very different now.
Well, I was coaching kids that were your age, and when I was in high school, we didn't have them that size either, at least not around here. And so, yeah, I prayed every day that somebody like that would walk through the door when I was coaching, and it never happened.
Never did. Never
happened. And a guy that size would probably end up playing guard as well for us. So there's that. But
perfect transition for size, though. Perfect transition for size.
Right.
We talk about the Rover position, which for people that don't really, know the X's and O's or really care about it that much, Rover is basically just the Notre Dame Sam linebacker in a spread out system. So he's playing overhang position, split out between the tackle and number 2 or number 1 receiver. Like, that's just kind of how we core it. So this is a safety linebacker hybrid position. Mm-hmm. And the top player, I believe, on the board right now, in my opinion anyway, and I think Notre Dame is also very high on this young man, without doubt, is Anthony Saka. And he's out of St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is the son, and I'm sure you remember him, Vince, of Tony Saka that played at Penn State. He played with Al Golden when he was at Penn State as well, as former quarterback. We're talking about a rover here, Vince, that could eventually play Will. He's 6'3", 225 pounds playing safety in high school. Like, playing single high free safety. Like, it is absolutely insane.
As a sophomore.
Yes. So I've talked to him recently. They're kind of moving him around a little bit more this year. So, yeah, he's playing safety, but he's also playing Will linebacker a little bit. He's playing some Sam. Like, they're kind of moving him around on the second level a lot because Notre Dame, that's kind of what they see him as. Like I said, Al Golden has a very good relationship with his father, obviously. Al Golden played tight end. His dad was the quarterback. Like, there's a natural relationship there. And Anthony Saka, the son, has known Al Golden for a long time. And this is one where I think Al has been putting in great effort. There's no doubt about it. Anthony has been to campus already. He's eyeing to return either this summer or in the fall for a game visit. So I think Notre Dame's going to be able to get him multiple times on campus. There's a lot of schools coming after him where he grows up because he's a Philadelphia kid, and I'm right across the bridge from him. It's a lot of Penn State affiliates around here, right? There's a big Penn State fandom. And his dad played at Penn State. So if you ask me today who are the two biggest suitors for Anthony Saka, I would say it's Notre Dame, and I would say it's Penn State. You know, do you want to blaze your own trail and go play at Notre Dame, or do you want to stick with something that's a little bit more familiar, and that's Penn State football? I think Notre Dame has a good chance at Anthony, and I think that he is a guy that would be a dynamite rover and eventually turning into a Will on the next level. Like, he's taller, but think Drew Tranquil as far as the ability to play rover early and then eventually transition into a Will linebacker.
Just kind of grow into that position physically. And
exactly.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right, so next guy on our list is Dominic Hulak.
Dominic's a very interesting player. He's out of Elmhurst, Illinois, Immaculate Conception. So he is very local. You know, he's right outside of Chicago. It's like a suburb. This is one of those kids that I talked about in the beginning, Vince, he's a kid that I think projects eventually to a Viper. He is 6'3", 230 plus pounds as a sophomore in high school, just finished up. He's going to be 250 plus pretty quickly. Like, he is. And when he is going to be on campus July 30th for the recruiting barbecue. And by the way, if you guys want to keep up on that list, boards.irishbreakdown.com is the place that you want to make sure that you stay up to date on the visitor list. But Dominic will be back for his third time this offseason. And obviously he's a local kid. So he knows Notre Dame football. He understands the brand that they bring, the prestige that they bring. And obviously he's very high. He even camped at Notre Dame a few weeks ago, and he camped despite having an offer already, Vince. Like, he didn't have to camp. He just wanted to camp. And when he was at camp, they played him at linebacker. They also played him at defensive end a ton as well. They kind of cross-trained him a little bit because I think that the understanding is, and Dominic understands this because I talked to him, is that eventually I might outgrow linebacker and I might be a defensive end. He's totally fine with that. You know, he's just a football player. So this is another kid that is very high on Notre Dame. I know Notre Dame likes him. You know, is he an immediate take right now? I think I have some question marks on that one, you know, depending. But I think that he's a kid that brings a lot of position versatility and the ability to play multiple spots. He can be a cross trainer. He could be a guy that even plays some Sam linebacker and base and then moves down and plays in some underfronts. He can do a lot of different things for a football team. So Dominic Hulak back July 30th for the recruiting cookout as well.
I'm hearing a lot of similarities between guys that are 6'3", 220 plus who have positional flexibility.
There is more guys on this list 6'3" plus than I mean, it's insane, man. Like, literally, I'm looking down this list. Probably the shortest guy we're talking about in this first section is 6'1", the shortest, right? Everybody else is 6'2" plus, and then we get into some of the heavy hitters, and they're all 6'2" plus. Feels like everybody on this board is 6'3" or 6'4". It is an embarrassment of riches, man. There's no doubt about that. You're
not kidding. So next on the list is a kid with a very interesting last name, Brett Clatterbaugh.
Yes, and a guy that Brian is very high on.
Okay.
And high on for two different reasons. One, he's a Virginia guy, right? So he got that immediate familiarity with Brett. He's out of Culpeper, Virginia, Eastern View High School. But also, he's a really good player. 6'2", 220 pounds right now. So again, a kid that we're talking about is going to be 235, 240 before all said and done. So this is a Mike linebacker, I think, eventually on the next level. But if you put on his film, it is hilarious, Vince, because he plays running back and he's just running dudes over. Like, it's just absolutely insane, man. So he's got that multi-level versatility. He can even play some offense when he's needed, obviously, for his high school Eastern View. been to campus this offseason as well. I think that he likes Notre Dame. I don't know if it's quite to the level as of right now as some of the other guys we're talking about on this list. Like, I think they're in his top group, but I wouldn't say that they're like 1 or 2 right now. I would say that they're collectively just a part of a top group for Brett Clatterball. So a kid that likes Notre Dame, but getting him back to campus, I think, is going to be important. Whether that is in the summer or in the fall for a game visit, getting him back to campus, I think, will escalate this one a little bit.
Okay. Got a few more guys to go in this first list. Landon McComber is a guy that's on this list.
He's one of my favorite players in the class right now. He is a Nevada kid. He played, I forget the high school that he was at previously, but he transferred to Bishop Gorman this offseason. Of course. Yes, of course. He's another rover on this list. 6'2", 190, 195 pounds right now. This kid is a very gifted player in space, and he literally played rover for his high school out in space a ton. He moves incredibly well. He's twitched up. He can play man coverage. He can close passing windows with his really good change of direction and length that he has for the position. I think he could eventually be a will, but as of today, he is definitely a guy that I think projects more favorably to the rover position. He's been in Notre Dame this offseason. I talked to him like 2 or 3 days ago, something like that. And he's also trying to plan a trip already back to Notre Dame. I'd be surprised if he wasn't at the Notre Dame-Ohio State game. I would be surprised if he was one of those guys that weren't at that game. So Notre Dame likes Landon McComber. Landon McComber has Notre Dame in his top group right now. I would say they're probably top 3 to 4, which is a great spot to be in right now.
Okay. Let's see here. Next on the list would be Carlton Smith.
Yes. Who is a St. Francis Academy, Baltimore, Maryland, 6'1", 200 pounds, a player that plays both offense and defense. His running back highlight tape is almost as impressive as his linebacker highlight tape. It is just really ridiculous. Vince, one of the biggest areas that Notre Dame still needs to make an impact in that they haven't recently is they need to get more in the Baltimore, D.C. area than they have. And St. Francis Academy is a Catholic school. It's a very good school in general, puts out a lot of talent. And if you're talking about 2025 players, St. Francis Academy is a place that Notre Dame desperately wants to get into. They have 2 corners, Blake Woodby and Kevin Humes. Kevin Humes has been in Notre Dame this offseason as well. They definitely like both of those football players. They've also offered Trent Wilson, who is a defensive lineman out of St. Francis Academy. But Carlton Smith is one of the more gifted players on this list as far as just the athleticism. He's explosive. He's fast. A player that I expect most likely is going to be making the visits later this month for the cookout. He has not verified that yet. It is not quite in stone, but it's something he is trying to make happen. So keep an eye on Carlton Smith, message board people. I'll probably have an update sometime as soon as he's able to kind of verify that visit. But Carlton Smith is another kid that Notre Dame needs to get in that Baltimore area more, Vince. They need to get more in Maryland. They need to get more into D.C. Yeah. And I'm not saying that they will necessarily with Carlton, but they missed on Jason Moore last cycle, 2023. They weren't able to get traction with a couple guys in 2024 enough. They need to be able to get into that market right now because there is a lot of talent coming out of the Maryland, D.C. area.
Okay. That excites me because I do like the Maryland, D.C. area. Maybe that's kind of like the basketball side of me coming out, but like I know they've been super successful, the basketball side coming out of there. If they've got hard-nosed guys playing basketball, they got to have hard-nosed guys playing football. So I love that.
That's it.
Final guy on this first list, Josiah Kia.
Which is a person that you'll know, Vince, because he's the younger brother of Kahana Kia, who was a linebacker signing in 2021. He is now on his LDS mission.
Okay.
He is in the state of North Carolina. I think he's in Raleigh. So he is set to be back in 2024. His brother, 2025 linebacker, another 6'2", 195-pound rover type that eventually is probably going to transition into will. He has never been on campus as a recruit yet. Never been on campus as a recruit, but he's been on campus because his brother
is a family member
of Notre Dame. Exactly. Right. So he's another kid that I expect to be on campus more likely in the season because he's out of the state of Hawaii, obviously, and travel from Hawaii to South Bend isn't the easiest thing in the world.
Especially on your own dime. I mean, that's not an inexpensive trip.
So I expect him to take a nice weekend visit sometime this fall, catch a game, and to really kind of start to really feel like a recruit. Because the last time he was here, he was a fan and he was a supporter of his brother. So being able to go there as a football player and a recruit, I think will be big time for Josiah, who is another very talented player, a lot different than his brother. His brother was a 5'11 and a half, 230-pound thumper, like downhill, explosive. Josiah is a loose safety type that plays linebacker. Like that's more of his game, which is not why he projects to Rover.
Okay. So these are the guys that have been on campus, right? And this is where they stand as sophomores. It's unbelievable. They're as sophomores about to start their junior season here in a couple of weeks. So there's a whole other group, because we said this is a big class. This is a deep class. There's a lot of names that are out there, but this is a group. This next group is a group that Notre Dame has offered, but they haven't had a chance to get them on campus. I would assume that that's the next step. And so I'll start going through these names, and you tell us where Notre Dame stands with these guys. So a name that is somewhat familiar to Notre Dame fans, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng.
Yeah, and you quantified the segment very well, Vince. These are players that are notable members of the board that each have demonstrated interest in Notre Dame in some capacity, but have not been able to take a visit to Notre Dame. So, but these guys are still interested in the University of Notre Dame, which is a great starting point. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, who was playing at DeMatha Catholic down in Maryland, transferred to IMG Academy this offseason. He is the younger brother of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So obviously there is very heavy familiarity with Notre Dame, obviously heavy familiarity with his brother. I think he knows his brother pretty well. This is a 6'2", 210-pound will linebacker that is just incredibly explosive. Like he can play out in the slot. He can play in the box. He is just about as gifted of an athlete as of anybody on this list. He is so talented. And he told me in a recent interview, his top group right now is all the heavy Florida hitters and Notre Dame. That's it. So it's all the Florida schools. It's Florida State, Florida, Miami. It's Notre Dame. So, again, IMG kid that always gives you pause. And also, weirdly, despite him being who he is, as far as family members concerned, he's never been to campus before. He's never been to Notre Dame, despite being Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's little brother. So, getting him to campus is a priority for this staff. They need to be able to get Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng to campus because he is special. He brings a dynamic that you don't have enough of on the roster. He is, in my opinion, a 5-star caliber player in the 2025 class. He is that good. Notre Dame needs to make some headway. They're in a surprisingly good spot despite never getting him on campus. But if they're able to get him on, I think that things could turn in Notre Dame's favor very quickly. Nice.
It's very interesting that it's all Florida schools and Notre Dame. Like that, to me, that's a microcosm of who Notre Dame is. You know what I mean? Like, they're not a regional school. They are Notre Dame, and they can be in the mix with guys who have regional schools across their list and Notre Dame. Like that's awesome.
You could kill two birds with one stone with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng too, Vince, in the sense of Notre Dame has had struggles with IMG Academy. We've talked about that. And the other one is that he is a DeMatha Catholic guy, though. He's a Maryland kid. So you could literally get some of the top talent from Maryland and an IMG kid all in the same one. Again, it's going to be a tough one. It's not going to be easy.
Sure.
But Notre Dame has a chance is where we are.
All right. Well, next guy on this list is Justin Hill. Very easy name to pronounce. Justin Hill.
I know this is Brandon Plesner's one of his favorite players that we always talk about. He is out of the state of Ohio.
Okay.
This is a young man that he was the one that I opened with, Vince. He's out of Cincinnati, Ohio, Winston Woods. He is the 6'4", 215-pound outside linebacker that is probably going to be a Viper long-term. Probably. Okay. He says all the right things about Notre Dame. I think there was legitimate interest in Notre Dame, but it's going to be a hard pull away from the Buckeyes, the in-state school.
Sure.
It's going to be a very hard pull. I think Ohio State has the inside track on Justin as we stand today, but Notre Dame's going to keep recruiting him. They're going to keep recruiting him. They're going to keep battling because he is a gifted athlete. There is a world where he's the Viper target in this class when all is said and done because he is really gifted athlete, man. He's a twitched up, athletic, explosive kid who is going to quickly outgrow the linebacker position, in my opinion.
Okay. So I've heard that a couple times that some of these guys might hit the Viper position, but that's not overly surprising because they're sophomores in high school. Like they're not finished growing up. I mean, granted, a lot of guys are still growing into their 20s, but like these guys are still kids. They're like young kids. And there's a huge difference from physicality and physique and all of those things going from sophomore to junior year. And then, of course, junior to senior year, you even see a bigger jump at times. I mean, it just depends on who these kids are. But if they're already 6'3", 6'4", 225, 230 pounds, like it's going to be tough to keep them off the defensive line at some point.
It's hysterical watching Justin because he is literally 6'4", 215, and he looks super skinny, man. It's like that kid's legitimately probably going to be 6'4" and a half, 6'5", 250. Like easily, I think. He's a really, really impressive cat, man. He is. Yeah. But I mean, they play him in space a ton. He moves. He has good hips. It's pretty nutty, to be honest. Like, it's insane what some of these kids can do now.
Yeah, no doubt. So next guy on this list, another easy name, Christian Jones.
Christian Jones, Omaha, Nebraska, West Side High School.
Okay.
If that sounds familiar, it's because Notre Dame has a commit in the 2024 class from the same exact high school, and that's Teddy Rizak, the linebacker, the rover, 6'4", 195 pounds. Christian Jones is a dude, an absolute dude. We knew about Christian Jones before we knew about Teddy Rizak. No question. 6'3", 215 pounds right this second. Another kid, wouldn't be shocked if he's a Viper eventually. Wouldn't be shocked about it. But you want to talk about hilarious film? They play this kid as an overhang in man coverage at 6'3", 215 pounds. They put him on the edge and let him rush the passer at times. He is like that all-around just weapon on the defense.
Letting him play where just go get the ball. We're going to put you in different spots. Go get the ball.
35-2 the last 3 years is West Side High School, including his 2 state championships. Christian Jones is a big reason why. He loves Notre Dame. Loves them. I think that Notre Dame is maybe his leader right now.
Wow, without even coming to campus once.
Without even coming to campus. Part of it is he really likes to pitch. He loves the relationships he has with the staff. Okay. And he's also very good friends with Teddy Rizak. So that all helps. It all helps. So again, I'm not saying this is like a foregone conclusion he ends up at Notre Dame class. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is I think Notre Dame has a little bit of the inside track on Christian Jones. He is very, very good football player.
But I like where they stand right now. Yes. With signing day being 2 years away.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
I still like where they are. My
dumb.
gosh, I can't even say that with a straight face. All right. Next guy on the list is Madden Filiamu-Asa. Is that how you say that?
Filiamu.
Okay. Filiamu. Gotcha.
Yeah. Another massive kid. He's 6'3", 215, 220 pounds. This is a true middle linebacker. Like, this is your true Mike. He's one of the highest rated kids on this list. He's considered a top 50 recruit by at least one recruiting platform right now. Another kid that I think is surprisingly high on Notre Dame right now, even though he's never visited. But I think he brings a similar background to what we just saw of Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa. Like, I think that they bring a similar background. California kids, heavily devoted to their faith. I think there's a lot of similarities there.
Okay.
So getting him on campus, maybe if anybody on this list, is like an absolute priority of the kids that have not been on campus. To him and Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng are 2 guys that, like, get them on campus and then see what you can do with them. Because Madden is explosive. He is physical. He's a thumper, man. Like, he's the downhill true Mike that can also move pretty dang well in space as well. Like, he's not a bad athlete at all. So I look at that and I just say, man, like, Madden Filiamu is a kid that you get on campus and then you see how you can work your magic, because I would call Notre Dame in his top group right now. Like, they are. And that's impressive considering the kid has offers from everyone. Everyone wants Madden, and Madden still is very interested in the University of Notre Dame, which is a great starting point.
And where's he out of again?
He's a California kid.
Kid again.
Yeah, just like Noah McHale, he is out of J. Sarah Catholic in San Juan Capistrano.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's see here. Elijah Barnes is next on the list.
Dallas, Texas Skyline.
Dallas. All right.
I feel so bad for Skyline, Vince, because Skyline is not a good football team. They're like 2-8 last year or something. Ooh. But you watch Elijah Barnes' film, you're like, that guy is stupid good on a bad football team. Like, he's so good, man. 6'1", 215 pounds. He's one of the smaller guys on the list, but don't let the size fool you, man. This kid packs a punch as a tackler, and he can move really well for a guy that's a little bit sawed off. So he's not the longer dude on the list that we've been talking about. We've been talking about guys that are 6'3" every single spot. This kid is more of a stockier built type of true inside linebacker. I think there's some similarities. Notre Dame fans are going to know that Notre Dame was on for a while Bradley Shaw out of Hoover, Alabama. I think they have similar-ish games, although I would say I think Barnes is a slightly more athletic, a slightly more explosive version, but they're similar profiles as being a little bit sawed off, a little bit squattier, a little bit more leverage, but they are all very good downhill players, and that's exactly what Elijah Barnes is out of Skyline.
Okay. And then that wouldn't hurt, keeping that Texas pipeline going either,
Yes.
Texas, California, those are all Florida, like those are all pipelines that, Notre Dame needs to have in their back pocket.
And they're doing a good job of it for the most part. I mean, we talked about what they did in 2023 with all the Texas kids. They ended up signing 4. They have 2 committed in the 3 committed in the 2024 class with Logan Thomas, Keidron Young, and the crew, right? So like Leonard Moore is the 3rd one in the 2024 class out of the state of Texas. So yes, continuing the Texas pipeline. You have 2 players out of California in the 2024 class after 2 in the 2023 class, Rico Flores and Cooper Flanagan. And then Florida, 2025 class, one of your 2 commits is out of the state of Florida, and Davion Dixon, the defensive tackle. So yes, getting out of those pipelines is very important. And even if it's not Skyline, again, struggled on the field last year, but getting this type of talent, he's a kid that all the Texas schools are after. He has an offer from Alabama, several of the SEC schools. So everybody's high on Elijah Barnes.
Yeah, I bet they are. All right, final guy in this group, Gavin Nix.
Gavin Nix is a very interesting one. He's another kid that's good. He's going to be playing with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng this year. He's an IMG Academy kid. He's one of those interesting ones, Vince, that wasn't on the radar as early as some of these guys. But he was one of those guys that were like, I want to hear from Notre Dame. I want an offer from the University of Notre Dame. I want to talk to Notre Dame. I want to develop a relationship with Notre Dame. He kind of advocated for his offer.
Okay.
So I expect him to visit sometime in the future, whether that is game visit or later this summer. But I also think that he is very intrigued by Notre Dame. It's this place that he wanted to hear from. He, again, similar to Elijah Barnes, he's a little bit more of the sawed-off player. He's about 6'1", 215-ish pounds right now. Gavin Nix, some list him only at 6 foot. So he's a 6'1" linebacker. But he's dense, he's physical, he gets downhill, he does all the traditional things that we'd really want from a middle linebacker position, just a little bit in a lighter package.
Okay. So you just went through about 15 different names of guys. And I would imagine that 2/3 of those guys are takes for Notre Dame pretty much right away if they wanted to commit to Notre Dame. So that, in a nutshell, tells you how deep this group is. I mean, this is an incredibly deep linebacker class, in 25, and this is going to be a fun group to follow because they're going to be recruiting all of them. I mean, they're not going to be. This is not a year where it's like, okay, these are the 3 guys that we really want. We're going to focus on these 2 or 3 guys. Right. That's not how this is going to work. They're going to spread the wealth. They're going to keep these guys in the loop. They're going to recruit the crap out of these guys, and they're going to get the best 3 guys for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, Vince, there's 26 guys that are offered by Notre Dame. So, I didn't even go in depth on a lot of them because it's just like there's a wait and see approach to some of these kids, right? Like some of them say the right things, but they've never visited. They maybe don't talk to Notre Dame consistently. There's different things that happen. I mean, they're literally, if I just kind of put a couple more names out there without going super in depth, Keelan Moses is out of University Lab in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which, of course, is on LSU's campus. But that's the same high school that Jaden Osbury came out in the 2023 class that Notre Dame was able to get. So Keelan Moses is a guy to watch. Kamar Archie is on the list. He is a Hun School kid out of Princeton, New Jersey. I hesitate with including him because, one, he was supposed to be one of the evaluation camps. He didn't make the trip. And second, that's Owen Wafels High School. So I think you may have burned a bridge a little bit there with how that situation went down. Marquise Davis out of Cleveland Heights in the state of Ohio is on the board. You have Bo Jackson. No, not that Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson out of Cleveland, Ohio, Villa Angela, St. Joseph. Right. If only the other Bo Jackson could come. Marco Jones out of Danville, California. Sam Ramon Valley is on the board, as is Riley Pettijohn, McKinney High School in the state of Texas. Ethan Pritchard is on the board out of Sanford, Florida, Seminole High School. Kelvion Riggins is one of the 2 linebackers from South Oak Cliff in Dallas, Texas that are on the board as well. Jaden Shelton is the other one. Jaden Shelton's a super interesting player. Just not a lot of contact with Notre Dame right now, but he plays like pass rusher for South Oak Cliff at only 6 foot, 200 pounds. But he is a lightning bug of a defender. Very interesting player. Abdul Sanders Jr. out of Mater Dei is a kid that's worthy to at least keep an eye on, because Notre Dame is on a lot of kids out of Mater Dei in 2025. Both corners who start for them is on the radar. Nasir Wyatt, who is also on this list, a pass rusher who's going to project more favorably to linebacker at the next level, is on Notre Dame's list as well. They also have Zayden Walker, out of Ellaville, Georgia, Schley County. Anthony Williams from Pearland, Texas, Shadow Creek, who Notre Dame is talking to. It's just he has never been on campus. So this is a ridiculous list of players, man. Again, I have an article that's going to be coming out probably later today, if not tomorrow. Every player that I just went through, you guys can be able to kind of see the synopsis of most of them. And then there's a list of the other guys that I just kind of went through of, hey, Notre Dame has offered them. They have some level of interest, but like maybe just not enough, or they haven't visited campus, or they have just limited communication to Notre Dame. But 26 names to work through, Vince. Notre Dame they're in a good spot with linebacker recruiting in 2025, to say the least.
Well, and the fact that they are actively recruiting these kids before their junior year. And you're going to get more clarity to this group as their junior year goes on, right? I mean, as they get more varsity film, as you see more highlights, you see more about these kids. Some kids are going to keep going like this. Some kids are going to plateau. I mean, that's just normal. You know what I mean? And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this fall shakes out for a lot of these 25 kids at every position, not just linebacker, but at every position. And so let me ask you this question. This is kind of an all-encompassing 24-25 question. So obviously Notre Dame has turned the page at numerous positions to the 25 class.
Yep.
There's not really much left on the board for Notre Dame in the 24 class. Can you just recap kind of where Notre Dame sits with the 24 class going into the season? I know people are talking about, if Notre Dame does really well, they're potentially going to flip some kids, all this stuff, right? But how do they look going into the season with the 24 class? And then kind of okay, well, if they're not, recruiting 24s in that position, obviously they've turned the page to 25.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So for 2024, Notre Dame's mostly done. Mostly. It's not done yet, but you have 22 commits in the 2024 class. As of right now, quarterback is done with CJ Carr in the class. Running back is done with Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young in the class. Wide receiver is done now with Micah Gilberts, Cam Williams, and then obviously the most recent commitment out of the state of California. That's done. Tight end is an interesting one. I think for the most part you're done with Jack Larson, but I would say just kind of keep an eye on tight end recruiting. I wouldn't be shocked if Notre Dame just kind of keeps their eyes open, because they were interested to get Carter Nelson in the 2024 class. So I think they would be okay with bypassing a second tight end in 2024 and using that for a second tight end in 2025 with Nate Roberts. But we are sitting here, and still I think that the option is at least on the table. Offensive line, Gerby Lambert's the last key in that class. You have 3 commitments right now: Peter Jones, Anthony Knapp, and Styles Prescott. If you get Gerby Lambert sometime this summer, then I think you're there with 4 after a 5-man class in 2023. You feel great about where you are. Gerby Lambert is really the last step to putting together the best offensive recruiting class Notre Dame has had in X amount of years. I mean, Brian's talked about this probably at least in like the last 10 or 15 years. This is the best offensive class potentially if you get a Gerby Lambert. So you get Gerby, keep your eyes open for maybe another tight end, but not necessarily the end-all be-all to the tight end position. Then defense, I think that you are, again, you're mostly done. Okay. Defensive ends are done. You have Cole Mullins, you have Bryce Young, you have Logan Thomas. That's done. You don't need another player there. Defensive tackle is an interesting one. Right now, you have a commitment from Sean Sevillano. You would have wanted to get another one in the class. There's a possibility that long-term, Bryce Young could fill that if Bryce Young's body develops the way you think it could. But I still think that Notre Dame's going to keep their eyes open, and obviously they're going to keep recruiting Justin Scott until the very end. So they're going to keep recruiting him and hope that they can flip him. Hopefully he's able to visit for the Ohio State Notre Dame game, and then you're able to maybe work magic in that one. But regardless of if you get Justin Scott or not, I wouldn't be shocked if Notre Dame just kind of keeps doing their due diligence at defensive tackle. Let's keep looking what's out there. Let's see who develops, who pops off during the season. And then maybe you find a second defensive tackle to go with Sean Sevillano if you don't get Justin Scott. So I think defensive tackle is an interesting one.
Okay.
Linebacker is done. Now that you have your three linebackers with Kyngstonn, Viliamu-Asa, with Bodie Cahoon, with Teddy Rizek, you're done at linebacker. Cornerback is the other spot that's going to be super interesting because they are going to keep recruiting Caleb Beasley. Mm-hmm. So great cornerback out of the state of Tennessee until he tells them to beat it. And apparently he hasn't told them to beat it until now.
If he's committed to Tennessee, right? I mean, and they're going to keep working on him.
And there was reports a few weeks ago that Caleb Beasley had said that things are shut down, but he still communicates with Notre Dame. So until you say no, straight up, the option is still potentially on the board. So Caleb Beasley at corner. And then I think safety right now is pretty much done with the three safeties that you have because you have Bronte Johnson, you have Kennedy Urlacher, you have Tabron Betty-Powell. The other one, though, that could be on board sometime this summer is Davis Andrews, who's a very talented safety out of the state of Utah. He's a player Notre Dame wants. He's going to be back for the July 30th barbecue, and I think Notre Dame has a very good chance to land Davis Andrews. The one hesitation, though, because I know I've talked to Brian about this, and Brian doesn't even consider him a 2024 recruit anymore because Davis Andrews is going to potentially take a 2-year mission to begin his career. Gotcha. So he's probably going to be a 2026 kid technically, right? But as of right now, his classification is 2024. So I think really it's about Davis Andrews, Gerby Lamberts. Then you try to flip Caleb Beasley, Justin Scott, and then you keep your eyes on potentially a tight end and another defensive tackle recruits. There's no foregone conclusion that there will be a second tight end. There's no foregone conclusion that there will be another defensive tackle not named Justin Scott in the class that Notre Dame will really push for. But I think that's where the numbers will dictate. So as of right now, you're at 22. I think you are going to get to 24 definitely, maybe 26, depending on how the numbers shake out or how the players shake out, I should say.
So no specialists, no kickers, punters, snappers. They're not going to go down that road. What the heck, man?
Man, I don't know, man. I don't know Marty Biaggi well enough at this point. Right? It's like Brian Mason just loved the transfer portal kids. So do they keep doing the transfer portal thing? Do they start high school recruiting a little bit more? I'm not 100% sure about that, man.
Well, here's what I will tell you because Marty Biaggi did do a little talk that I was a part of, and he said that the big time schools more or less nowadays are going to the transfer portal. They want guys that have proven themselves at the collegiate level, and they're fine with going to the transfer portal and pulling those guys towards the end of their career. And high school recruiting just isn't what it used to be for the big time schools. And so they're like, hey, go to a Central Florida or to a MAC school or wherever, right? Insert school here, kick butt, and then you got a chance to come over. And so, it is what it is,
Well, if Coach Biaggi wants to give me a call, Vince, I know a great 2025 specialist that is up for conversation, right?
Darn right. Get the name out there. Dad doesn't want to pay tuition, baby. No, I'm joking, but no, it's interesting the way they're doing specialists now. It's just for the big time schools, it's different for the smaller schools for sure.
It's so weird, man. It really is. Like my buddy was a long snapper at Rhode Island, and he kind of let me in on kind of the process on everything one time. And I'm just like, that is super complicated, man.
It's super complicated, man. And the normal, like we follow recruiting. I know how recruiting works at every other position on the football field, except kicker, punter, snapper, which is a completely different scenario, man. You got to pay to do this, and you got to get, it's nuts. It's nuts.
Yes. But that's because no one wants to spend their time actually, scouting a long snapper.
Which I get. I get it. Which, I totally agree. Hey, all they got to do is go to their own backyard.
I hear that, man.
Come on,
I hear
man.
that.
Head coach. Just go watch your son
man.
play, and you'll happen to see somebody else's son play.
I've never seen your con kick or punt, Vince, but I will vouch for him today. Sir. I'll vouch for him today.
I'll invite you to a game. When you come up, we'll go to a game on Friday night, and then we'll go to Notre Dame game on Saturday. It'll be fun.
Sounds like a perfect plan to me, man.
Anyway, so that's our rundown of the linebacker core, or I should say the linebacking recruiting world and where things are, and obviously they've shut down 24 with the big commitment of KVA yesterday. Huge news, obviously. I mean, I do want to touch on this just briefly, and I know you guys probably talked about this in yesterday's show. I watched most of it, but sure. You want to talk about the best kept secret in recruiting about where he was going to go until the day of. I mean, that was impressively done by this kid in the world of social media, in the world of word of mouth, in the world of just information overload. Yes. He was able to keep this so close to the vest until the day of. I was shocked by the whole thing.
I'm not going to lie to you, man. I love Kyngstonn, and I liked Kyngstonn before he made his decision to Notre Dame because
you've been on record of that one.
Vince, he's just one of those kids that is incredibly honest, incredibly authentic, and he doesn't like the glitz and glamour, man. Like, he's just like, I'm just trying to find the home, right? And I felt so bad for Logan Saldate on Friday because he had never even reported an offer from Notre Dame. And then I go on 247 the morning before he commits, and they reported an offer. They put a crystal ball in for him. I'm like, guys, like, you completely ruined this kid's day. Like, everyone knows that the flip's about to happen now. Everybody knows it. But, you know, he has to work through that. Kyngstonn did this the right way, man. He kept this as authentic as possible. Obviously, it still got out there a couple hours beforehand because people start, circulating on their message boards and everything. But for the most part, I have never seen a player that kept things under wraps. And again, it was a quick turn last second. Like, he made the Notre Dame decision pretty late in the process. Sure. But still, he kept everything under wraps. And, I mean, literally, I went to bed Saturday night, and I'm like, I don't know where Kyngston's going to go to school. Like, I really don't know where he's going to go to school. And then I woke up Saturday. I got on the phone with someone, a good source, and I was like, oh, cool. He's going to go to Notre Dame. That's dope. That's fantastic. But luckily for him, you go on the other sites, and there's no crystal balls in. There's no picks. There's nothing, none of that confidence meter stuff. I'm just like, that's awesome. He wanted this moment to be his moment, his family's moment, and he wanted to do best for the staffs that were involved in this recruitment. So hats off to Kyngstonn, man. Good dude, good young man, and I think he did everything the right way. I really do.
And he obviously must have kept his circle pretty tight, and the people that were in his circle of trust did not betray him by going out there and telling people what was going on. And I mean, that's impressive by itself.
I talked to a young man who I'm not going to put his name out there, but he plays with Kyngstonn and pretty close. And he had no idea where he was going to go on Saturday, Vince. Like, no idea. And like, it was just a completely off the record conversation. He had no idea where he was going to go. I was like, yes, Kyngstonn kept this to himself and his family. Not even his coach. I don't even think his coaches were that crazily involved. Like, they're involved, right? Because all coaches are. Sure. But like, he kept this to his inner circle. Absolutely. You're 100% correct about that, it's really cool, man. It's really cool.
Awesome. That's awesome. And it obviously was a huge pickup for Notre Dame. And it felt, there was a lot of people comparing it to the Manti Te'o announcement and all of those different things. And kind of, I guess I get that from a surprise, surprise, he didn't know kind of a situation. That part I agree with. The rest, all the other similarities are kind of a stretch. But I remember teaching. I was in the classroom, and this was back in the day, man. So like, this was before a lot of things, and this was like what, 2004, 2005? No, I'm sorry. It would have been, let's see, like 2012. Right? So it would have been like 8 or 9, something along those lines, right? Yeah. So this was early on, man. And I'm like refreshing and like looking for sources. And I was in the middle of class when I found out.
You're on scout.com.
Oh, yeah. Like, this was back in the day, man. And I certainly wasn't paying for any of that stuff. And so I was trying to figure it out. And I just remember being shocked and surprised because everybody figured he was going to go to USC. And so this was similar. I was definitely surprised, but in a good way. And we'll see how things end up. But, that's probably where the comparison ends for me. I mean, he's not Manti Te'o. Let's everybody take a breath. But at the same time, this kid's going to be really good. And he's a great kid, as you had mentioned, and he's going to be a great football player too. And so exciting way to close out the linebacking recruiting for 24 for sure.
Yeah. I mean, exciting way to, you're pretty much done defensive recruiting at this point. Again, you're
that's true.
Shooting for Davis Andrews, and you're going to try to flip Caleb Beasley and Justin Scott, but that's not a foregone conclusion that either one of those things happen. Right. So this was a much needed boost to the defensive class because it's an incredible offensive class. Defensive class has some question marks to it. There's a lot of upside kids, but there's not a ton of known commodities in that class, foregone conclusions. That's what Kyngstonn is, Vince. He brings a floor to the conversation where I'm just that kid's going to be a good football player in college, right? Even if he doesn't ever end up being a star, he's going to be a good football player. Yes. There's no doubt about it. That baseline is very important. His
instincts are very, very good. He doesn't, watching the film with you guys yesterday, I was watching it, with everybody else. And I was like, okay, he doesn't take false steps. He sees things. He reads things. The game must be so slow for him at the high school level right now. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I want to send his film to some current Notre Dame linebackers and be like, hey, watch this technique and let's do that more. Which is super hyperbolic, but not completely, because he plays with incredible technique and incredible eye discipline. It's very, very good.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap up our 25 edition of the linebacking class. And obviously we dipped into a few other positions as well and wrapped up the 24 linebacking class as well. And we're gonna transition to a mailbag. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell. Because if you didn't have the notification bell rung, then you didn't know that there was a show yesterday at 5:05. Right after KVA made his announcement.
5:15.
Was it 5:15? Okay. It was quick. It was well, that's true, because he didn't really even make his announcement until about 10 after. So I mean, it was pretty late after 5 o'clock. But either way, make sure you hit all that stuff. Share with your family and friends. I actually had a Notre Dame coach call me today, not a football Notre Dame coach, a different sport. And we were talking about some other stuff. And he's like, hey, by the way, Irish Breakdown, man. He goes, I love watching Irish Breakdown. He goes, I'm a closet football recruiting fan. And he goes, I love watching you guys. You guys are awesome. And so there, you just never know. So shout out to that coach. I don't want to put his name out there. I don't want to, but shout out to him for keeping an eye out and watching with us. That was a lot of fun. So make sure you hit that like button. Look at this. David Lowe. He's jumping in for us. 377 in the chat and only 7 likes. That hurts my feelings. Come on, people. Hit the button. Hit the thumbs up.
I just got in the chat too, so let's get it going, man. Let's get this rocking. Mailbag questions, fans.
That's right. And yeah, like Ryan said, drop those mailbag questions because that's what we are about to hit. But this is going to end the first portion of our day, and then we're going to jump into the mailbag. So for Ryan, I'm Vince, and thanks for listening to Irish Breakdown Podcast. All right, Ryan, you ready to jump into a little mailbag?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right. I've got a few start up here. We've got a super chat right off the bat.
Super chat from Rob Osgood, who says, hey, guys. Sorry I missed the show yesterday. It's okay, Rob. Great news. With the news yesterday, what would your plan be for the 2025 linebackers, numbers, and types? Plus, thank you for the articles on the board. Great job. Thank you so much, Rob. We really appreciate it. So we kind of hit on this a little bit in the beginning, Rob, if you missed it. So basically what we're looking at is a little bit of a carbon copy of 2024 as of now. We think that the number is going to be 3 because Notre Dame has now had 4, 3, and 3 the last 3 cycles, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Not exactly those numbers, though, because we know Joshua Burnham has moved to Viper. Junior Tuihalamaka, has moved to Viper.
Right,
so they're not all linebackers anymore. But regardless, we think that 3 is still the number. So you're going to look at 1 rover type, a guy that's going to play out in space that eventually could move inside depending on who it is, and then 2 inside linebackers. So I wouldn't hyper focus on the Mike Will designation as much. You just want 2 guys that could definitely play inside, and then you can make that fit and make sense. Because in the 2025 class, with all the names we just went through, if you get two of those inside linebackers we're talking about, there's a good chance at least one of them is going to be able to play Mike. Like, it's a very good opportunity. So think two inside linebackers and one rover is what you're looking for in a three-man class in 2025.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's see. I'm going to hit this one because it's kind of a follow-up. Tyler Misguided wants some specifics, right?
He wants specifics. Tyler, Misguided Passion Binge, which is still the best name here. Misguided Passion. Absolutely fantastic. Which three linebackers are on the top of your board? On my board personally. So I'm gonna break it up kind of similar to what I just said for this question, Tyler. Rover, and then I'm going to work on two inside linebackers, okay? The rover is Anthony Sacca for me out of St. Joseph Prep in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 6'3", 225 pounds. I think he may be a will long-term as well, depending on how his body plays. But if you want just hilarity, dude, just put on his film. We're number 39 playing center fielder at the middle of the field. Fantastic athlete. I mean, he plays legitimate with range for depth. And now he's going to play a little bit of will linebacker and strong side linebacker, Sam linebacker as a senior as well, or as a junior. Well, I keep forgetting we're talking about 2025 kids.
Craziness.
It really is, man. So Anthony Sacca would be my rover for sure. Another rover to keep a close eye on, I think, is Landon McComber, who I'm a big fan of as well, out of Nevada. I just think the question is going to be, how many of one type you can take in a class, but that would definitely be my guy. I really like Christian Jones a lot, the linebacker out of Nebraska. He would probably be one of my inside linebackers because I really think that kid has a really nice baseline, man. He is explosive. He is physical. He's really good. And then the other inside linebacker, get me one of Noah McHale, Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng, Madden Faremo. Like, I'm good, man. It's not a cop-out, brother. Like, I would take either one of those kids and be like, yep, I'm a happy camper today. There's no wrong answers, I think, out of that group.
Nice. I like that. Okay, D-Troll Hunter. There, we hit it.
D-Troll says, Ryan, early, it looks like 2025 is so much deeper across the board. Would you completely just move on to 2025 altogether? What real value is there flipping a kid in 2024 at this point? I think there's value still, D-Troll. I do. I think that it depends on who the player is. Like, yes, across the board, there's more value at certain positions than maybe what you're going to get now. But if you flip a Justin Scott, there's no defensive tackle in 2025 that I would say is better than Justin Scott right now. Like, I wouldn't say that. I mean, there's some talented kids, sure, but Justin Scott is still a legitimate five-star caliber player. So I would keep recruiting him. Corner, I would still keep recruiting Caleb Beasley because I think that he is in the conversation with all those corners. If you miss out on Caleb Beasley, does it stink and you're not able to flip him? Sure, but it's still not like the end of the world, if you miss out on it. But continue that conversation for sure. And I think tight end in 2024 is very good like it is in 2025. So if there's a stud tight end that wants to also come to Notre Dame to be with Jack Larson in the 2024 class, I would keep that option open. I would. So I would not completely move on. There would be a couple kids that I would have my eyes on that I would be trying to flip. If not, I would also be just kind of looking and evaluating throughout the season to see if there's any Brandon Hillmans that pop up out of nowhere, like those types of kids, the Armel Mukams of the world. Those kids always show themselves, and I think there's always value to be found, but I'm not going to force a player at the end of the day. I'm not going to take a player in 2024 that I like just to fill a need if I don't love them, right? Like, you got to make sure that you still love the players you're bringing in.
Got another super chat.
Man, all the super chats today. Appreciate you all, including you, Justin Knox. I'm in Corona, California, so I'm in the middle of so many powerhouse high schools and can't wait to track these Notre Dame recruits pound the pavement around here. I mean, Vince, you said it, right? Like, California is one of the spots that you need to have some state power in, right? Like, you're not going to get 5 to 6 every year, but if you get 1 to 2 kids from the state of California, you're in a pretty good spot every year, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing. They've already targeted how many California kids? I mean, they're gonna do their work over there, and they have a history now with Marcus Freeman. They're going into the big states and they're pulling kids out. Like you said, they've gone into Texas and they pulled kids out. They've gone into Florida and they pulled kids out. They've gone into California and they pulled kids out. So I mean, they're really getting back to their national recruiting roots. I mean, they always had it, but now they're hitting kind of those major pipelines. They're getting into Arizona, which is a huge recruiting hotbed these days, it feels like. They're getting into the DC area in theory. So, like, I like what this staff is doing from a recruiting standpoint.
Well, think about this Texas stat, right, Vince? Previous 5 years before Marcus Freeman, so up to the 2022, well, Marcus Freeman was part of the 22 class, but up into the 2022 class, the 5-year cycle of recruiting classes, there have been 3 players from the state of Texas in 5 years that have signed with Notre Dame. Since 2023, there have been 7 players now that have committed to the University of Notre Dame. So they have more players in 2 cycles, 4 more in 2 cycles than they had the previous 5 years combined. If you bring it back 10 years, they had a total of 8 players from Texas in a 10-year span, which means in 2 years, they have 7. In previous 10, there was 8. Think about that for a second.
Man.
Marcus Freeman has prioritized
Yeah.
the state of Texas. He is about to just shatter how many Texas players in a window of time. He's really about to. I would love. I didn't have the chance to get to know Lou Emoji like you guys did. I just listened to him on the podcast, right? But I would love to hear how many Texas players were in like a 5-year span. What's the record for Notre Dame, right? Like hearing that, because I think Marcus Freeman's going to shatter that number, whatever it is.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Make sure you guys are getting some questions in. Put little MB in front of your mailbag question so we know that it is a mailbag question. Some of them I found.
Get these bots out of here, man. Get these bots out.
Oh, do we got some more? Are you kidding?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. What is that? Okay.
Seriously.
I got this. Good. Let me. Oh gosh. Here we go. All right. And boom. Got it. Okay.
See ya.
Yes. Exactly. Okay. Here's the next one from David Lowe. What kind of timeline do we have on Gerby Lambert committing?
David, I will say this. Gerby Lambert, I think, will make a decision publicly by the end of the summer, right? Like, I think that's where it is. When will he exactly make the decision? I'm not 100% sure. Gerby Lambert is very secretive. He doesn't really talk to media at all. Like, he lets some people know occasionally, like, I'm taking a visit here, I'm taking a visit there, but, like, try to find some actual deep information on players. Good luck. Like it doesn't happen for whatever reason. He just isn't like into the recruiting side of things, which is fine. I mean, that's his decision, right? But Gerby Lambert, Notre Dame, I think, is in a really good spot with him. I think that they are probably considered the team to beat. I would say that they're the team to beat. And I think that he will make a decision before the end of the summer. So could it happen tomorrow? It's possible. It's Gerby Lambert. Could it happen 2 weeks? It's possible. Could it happen at the end of August? Also possible. But I think that we will have a decision this summer.
So you think before football season starts for him or Notre Dame, you're going to have a decision one way or the other?
Sometime in August, by the latest, I would think would be a decision made for Gerby.
I was really hoping it was going to be in July, but July is rapidly coming to a close here. So I mean, it's possible. Though. Yeah, it's definitely. We had another question from Terry Gillery, was basically saying, is he going to commit before signing day? And you probably feel good about that, I would think.
I would bet the house that he commits before signing day. Yes.
Okay.
I bet the house.
We can definitely go with betting the house. All right. Here we go, Ryan. There's another one for you.
D. McAnally. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that incredibly wrong. I think you may have actually just messaged me to correct me on how I pronounce your name.
Oh, no.
So, McAnally. There we go. McAnally. Sorry so much, D. Now that KVA has committed, who do you think will be this year's Emil Wagner, a player that no Notre Dame site thought was going to choose Notre Dame? I mean, there's not really anybody left right now. I mean, I don't really have a great answer for that right now. You know, like I mean, I just really don't have an answer because right now the board is Gerby Lambert, Davis Andrews, and then try to flip a couple kids. That's kind of where it is, right? I mean, I guess if you want to take it, would it be shocking to some people if they were able to eventually flip Justin Scott? Maybe. Would it be shocking if maybe they were able to flip Caleb Beasley, even though I don't think that's like incredibly shocking? Maybe. But I just really don't think right now there's anybody that I would say Notre Dame is actively recruiting that I would be shocked if they ended up at Notre Dame. I just really wouldn't.
Okay, let's see. Go back to the top here. Boom.
We had Cryan Belly, who is one of the best names on here. Fall camp week. What are you guys looking forward to seeing the most? Vince, you'll be at practice, right? So, I mean, what are you looking forward to, man?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, gosh, the line is the list is long. There's no doubt about it. Definitely looking forward to see the relationship between Sam Hartman and his receivers. Obviously, I mean that's an easy one. RB2, who's going to be number 2 running back? What is that going to look like? Linebacker rotation, who's getting the reps and what team are they getting the reps with? What does the defensive line rotation look like? That's going to be very, very interesting. Who's running out there with the first team at second safety? Let's see. Who's going to be the punter? I mean, there's 2 guys vying to be the punter. Like there are a lot of different things to be looking for. I want to see from a coaching standpoint, how does Joe Rudolph coach these kids up? Like what is he? We talk about this all the time, right? Brian and I. If you want to know what a coach values, what is he talking about in the first couple of days of practice? Well, we're going to be there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, off the top of my head. So I believe that's the first 4 practices of fall camp, right? Now, some of those are only the first 5 periods or whatever, but there's always individual time in there. And so what's Joe Rudolph talking about? Like what are his values? What are his principles in coaching, and what is he trying to get across to these guys? So he's the one coach I'll be paying attention to for sure. We are going to have, this is a great segue, actually. We're going to have all kinds of coverage on camp, obviously. Yep. Camp access, for the most part, is all in the morning. So Wednesday morning, we get a full practice starting at 9:30. And then Thursday, Friday, we get the first 5 periods also starting at 9:30. So we will have 1 o'clock shows recapping what we saw at practice. And then Jesse and I will also have the evening shows on IB Nation Sports Talk, since Sean is on vacation this week. And so Jesse Stiers and I will be recapping what we saw, because Jesse's in town. He's not in Ohio. He's going to be in town. And so he'll hopefully be watching and seeing what's going on. And we're going to give our recap of things. So you're going to get all kinds of different perspectives on what's going on at practice. And just in time for the start of practice, it's going to be like 95 degrees, which is so awesome. So I'm glad practice is in the morning. So hopefully it's not super hot. But no, definitely looking forward to seeing some pigskin fly through the air and all of those different things, Ryan.
Well, and there's a lot of, because unfortunately I won't be at any of the practices this year. I got a chance to be at a couple last year, but I mean, Vince, the coolest thing I think is you want to see who the breakout stars are, right? And who are the players that are really showing out. But I love just seeing the new coaches for the first time in person, right? Like you mentioned Coach Rudolph. I'm interested to see, what does a Jared Parker-led offense look like in practice? Like, what's the pace? Like, what are you really focusing on? What is the tempo? What is the areas of that you're really focused on during practice? Because that stuff all matters. It really does. And we know Marcus Freeman's going to be involved in both sides of the ball, right? But like Tommy Rees had a lot of autonomy, to do what he wants to do offensively. What does Jared Parker's emphasis look like? And I think that's the fun part of this time of year.
Absolutely. And we're not, they're always going to leave us wanting more. That's just how it works, man. Like I'm going to want to see more, and it's going to be time to go and all those different things. But we're getting a lot of access this fall, and I'm fired up about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
We had another super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you so much, Tyler. What is the top 3 position groups in the 2025 recruiting cycle? Wow, that's tough, man. That's actually a really difficult question, Tyler. Of the players that I've seen so far, which again, you have to remember, it's mostly Notre Dame offers of the guys I've watched. Like I've watched a few miscellaneous guys that Notre Dame hasn't offered or isn't planning on offering. However you want to kind of coin that. I would say linebacker is definitely one of the most talented groups. It is littered with a lot of big-time players. That is one that I really like a lot. Quarterback is another. Quarterback is one where we talk about Deuce Knight all the time, but I mean, Bryce Underwood and George McIntyre and Bear Bachmeyer and all these kids. I mean, there is a really talented quarterbacks in 2025. Offensive tackle, I think, is another big one. Owen Strebig, David Sanders, Josh Petty. There is a lot of offensive tackles to know in 2025. That would probably be my top 3. Now I think about it. Oh, and safety. Honorable mention to safety. Safety has a ridiculous. Safety last year was solid in 2024, but I wouldn't call it great. 2025, I mean, Jadon Blair and Jordan Young and Trey McNutt and Trey Harrison and Matai Tagovailoa out of Nevada. Like, it is a ridiculous embarrassment of riches at safety. So I think safety, linebacker, offensive tackle, quarterback are probably top 4. I know you said top 3, but I'll give you 4.
Yeah, hey, always giving us the extra credit. That's what I like to see. So you mentioned quarterback as being one of the deeper positions. So we've got a couple of quarterback questions, and so I want to bring them up. I'll bring two up, and then you can kind of answer. All right. So we'll two questions here. Let's go with this one first from Ben.
Ben Tarnowski says, any updates on 2025 quarterbacks? Saw we just offered Bear Bachmeier a few days ago. Seems like getting them early in the class has a huge trickle effect on the rest of the class. Agree with the second part 100%, Ben.
Yep.
Yes, if you get a quarterback in early, it's very easy to sell a class. It is. I mean, because Vince, think about it like this, right? We're talking about how excellent this offensive class is in 2024. You don't think that partly is because CJ Carr was committed so early in this class and able to sell it, right? Like, why wouldn't Micah Gilbert and the running backs and the offensive linemen want to play with a guy like CJ Carr? Like, why wouldn't it? So, yes, I think that getting a quarterback in can be very beneficial to a class. I don't think it's an end-all, be-all because, I mean, we did end up – Notre Dame got a really good class in 2023 as well with Kenny Minchey not getting in until the season, obviously with all the turmoil of quarterback recruiting in 2023. But I do think it's beneficial. There's no doubt. Where we are with 2025 is Deuce Knight's still the guy, and we've talked about it. Nothing has changed. Deuce Knight is going to be here on Thursday, I believe is the 27th.
Oh, okay.
He is going to be on campus for a multi-day visit. Right now, it's Notre Dame and Tennessee. Still has intentions of making a commitment sometime this offseason during the summer. And I think that Notre Dame is in a very good spot along with Tennessee. That's a 50-50 coin flip right now for me. After that, I think you're setting up the board just in case you don't get a guy like Deuce Knight, right? So that's where Bear Bachmeier's coming in. Yes.
So this is pretty much right that your train of thought, and so I want to make sure I get John's question in here. He just says hypothetical Deuce Knight commits elsewhere, Tennessee most likely. If he went someplace else, I'm not saying he's most likely to go to Tennessee. I don't want people freaking out.
Yep.
He commits elsewhere. Who in the 25 quarterback class uncommitted would you take right now? I like Bear from California, has Notre Dame connections.
I also like Bear Bachmeier, and I think that the reason that they offer Bear Bachmeier is because the quarterback board's drying up a little bit. Like there's obviously been a couple commits already, and there's some guys that are trending in certain directions. So I think there's just a little bit of foresight by Notre Dame to say like, hey, we need to make sure that we have options on the board in case we don't get Deuce. And I think Bear Bachmeier, I mean, first of all, I want to see a quarterback named Bear Bachmeier play at Notre Dame. That's pretty dope.
Right.
He's the younger brother of Hank Bachmeier that played at Boise State, but he had an older brother, Tiger Bachmeier, who's going to play at Stanford as a wide receiver. He was really good, actually, yes.
Tiger and Bear, and what was the other kid's name?
Hank.
How do you name two of your kids Tiger and Bear, and the last one's Hank?
I don't know, but it's awesome. It's fantastic. But Bear's really good, man. He's listed anywhere between 6'1 or 6'2, 210 and 225 pounds. This kid's a load of a runner. He's really athletic, and he has surprising good arm strength on the move, man. I saw him throw a couple times. At first, I'm just like, I think it's good arm strength. I don't think it's exceptional, but then he throws on the move sometimes, like rolling to his left, where I'm like, whoa. There's something different there. Anywhere's number 47, which is just hysterical.
He's a quarterback wearing 47.
He played running back and linebacker most of his life, so he just kind of stuck with 47. Yeah. So
hilarious.
Bear is a really good football player, man. If Bear ends up being the quarterback for Notre Dame in 2025, you're in a good spot still, right? Like Deuce is still the guy. There's no question. But Tiger is a very good player. Don't think of it. Tiger. Bear is a very good football player in the 2025 class who has offers from Alabama, all the Pac-12 schools. Like he's a very good football player.
He would definitely make the all-name team. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
It's no General Booty, but yeah, Bear Bachmeier will do.
I remember that kid.
And I saw an all-name list, and it was like they had Tiger Shanks on there as a name of somebody. They had Rowdy Beers as a tight end. His name is Rowdy.
Wow.
Rowdy Beers.
Yeah.
Which is just
Kool-Aid has to be on there someplace.
Kool-Aid McKinstry. Yeah, that's on there.
Yeah, there's gotta be some of those on there. That's good stuff. Yeah. All right, let me go back to the top here. And this is more of a sarcastic comment, but I'm gonna throw it up here anyway.
Says, how far do you think the Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa will fall in the rankings now that he's committed? I mean, he's already fallen a little bit in some places. What is it? It's on 3, right? That has him ranked out of the top 300 in the country or whatever.
Seriously?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we've talked about this like a ton of times, but he Yeah, I'm going to look it up real quick, Vince, because we always throw shade at it because it's very bad. But it's he is lit. Yeah, let me pull up his recruiting rankings real quick because it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. So Kyngstonn is listed in order. Rivals as him as the number 35 overall player in the class, number 3 linebacker. 247 Sports has him as the number 87 player in the country, number 9 linebacker. ESPN's a little bit lower. They have him as the number 157 player, number 11 linebacker in the class. On3 has him as an unranked 3-star out of the top 300.
Wow.
And he's the number 27 linebacker in the 2025 class, according to On3.
Unranked.
Unranked. No ranking on him. He's a 4-star, but he is not a ranked 4-star. Yes.
Makes perfect sense. Unranked. Yes. But he's 30-something in Rivals. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. How can you be the number 35 player? And then that was like, you remember Micah Bell last year, Vince, out of Texas, the corner? He was ranked as a top 80 player by one. He was like number 70-something. And then he was an unranked 3-star and the number 70-something player in the state of Texas by like On3 or something. It's like, guys, how can a player be a top 100 player in the country and then other players an unranked 3-star who's the number 90-something player in the state of Texas? How does that make sense?
It doesn't, is the short answer.
That's the short answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
It's hysterical, man.
Yeah. So somebody asked this question: is Vince drinking from an orange sippy cup? The odds are pretty solid, actually, because we still have a bunch of sippy cups at our house because I have 5 kids. But no, this one is a red, and that is the logo of our church, actually. So I have a bunch of these from our church. But I always have something different down here. Got to stay hydrated. Got to keep the vocals, where they need to be. But I figure I'd pull that one up just for fun. For S's and G's, as they say.
I have my Wawa Diet Iced Tea, so there you go.
Look at you. See, you're getting like you're getting paid the big dollars, so you can get like the individually bottled drinks. I've got to go off-brand 2-liter into the plastic cup. So
100%. Yeah.
There we go from John.
John Criscio? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry, John. The only thing that concerns me is he has said a couple times he didn't feel like it was a fit when he left the official visit and Ohio State was the leader, and hopefully he doesn't flip. I know we just had another question, Vince, about
we did. Let me find it while you're talking here.
Percentage of him flipping or something.
Right here from Matthew Jacobs. Realistically, what are the chances and percentages that KVA decommits, if at all possible?
I mean, as of right now, it's 0%, Matthew, because like nothing's happened, right? Like it literally just happened yesterday. If there are some signs over the next couple months that cause me to change that opinion, then we'll actually bring up a percentage, right? Like if he starts, taking visits and doing all that type of stuff, like the warning signs of a decommitment. But as of right now, it's 0. Like I don't, KVA is not decommitting as of now, right? So we'll see obviously where that goes. To John's first question, though, that kind of ties everything together. I would say this, John. I would say this. Kyngstonn, because it was a very interesting quote that he had, Vince. I don't know if you saw it, but basically what it said was,
I did.
He couldn't see himself at Notre Dame, but he could see himself at the other 2 spots. But then he went on his little his church thing, and he had a moment of clarity basically after he was reading, something. And it was an interesting quote, and I completely understand why the question's coming up, John. And Matthew, I understand that where your logic's coming from and your question. I completely get it. But I would say this. A person that is devout as much as Kyngstonn is to religion and spirituality and all those great things, right? I think that stuff really matters a lot. So is there a chance that one day he wakes up and he thinks that he made a wrong decision? Like, it's always possible, man. We're in the world of recruiting. I'm not here to say that everything's 100%. But I am also here to say that I don't think that that's just like a little, I don't know how to say this properly. But it's not like a frivolous thing of why he picked Notre Dame, right? Like, it's not an uneasiness. And he's a big relationship guy. So he's going to get back to South Bend. He's going to talk to all the commits. He's going to talk to the coaches. And I think that relationship is going to continue to just kind of build a general understanding of like, this is where I was meant to be. Manti Te'o went through a similar thing, right? Like Manti was not sold to Notre Dame. he committed there because he had a feeling, right? He said that God kind of gave him a message that this is where he needed to be. And he did it. And is there any, did he ever have any doubts about it? I'm sure there was some at some point. I remember his documentary where he talked about it, like him being homesick and stuff. But at the end of the day, he made a decision. He stuck to it, and he loved every moment, right? So at Rise of right now, Matthew, it's a very understandable question. You can check back in at a later date if anything changes, but right now it's a 0. Could that change? Sure. But right now, I don't think that Kyngstonn is regretting his decision at all.
Nice. Back to the linebackers in the 25 class, Ryan.
Lord Tupperton, who says, who are the staff's top 4 targets at linebacker in the 2025 class? Tupperton. I don't know.
Lord Tupperton sounds like a villain in the next Toy Story movie or something like that. Like, that's what Lord Tupperton sounds like to me. But great name, man. You got me to laugh. I appreciate it.
Yes. No, it was very funny. I literally had to do a double take of am I saying that right? I am. Who does have top 4 targets at linebacker? Lord, I think that there are a few guys that Notre Dame would be very happy on, which is why the board is so big as of right now. Some of my favorite guys, and again, this isn't based this is based slightly on intel because these are guys that Notre Dame's talking to a lot and trying to get back to campus, so that matters. I think Anthony Sacca is very high on their list. I think Noah McHale is very high on the list. I think Madden Faremo is high on their list. I think Christian Jones is high on their list. I think there are several guys that Notre Dame is very, very high on. I just talked to Anthony Williams, who I think Notre Dame likes a lot, and trying to get him to campus. So I just don't think there's 4 key targets in the class. I think there's a lot of guys that Notre Dame would be very happy with.
Love it. From our
Brandon Blasner,
our resident recruiting guru here, Brandon.
Yes. Brandon says, Ryan, have you watched film of linebacker edge targets Max Granville, Marco Jones, and/or Anthony Williams? I think they all may project a Viper, but those 3 are extremely impressive, especially Granville. Yeah, Brandon, I've watched all of them. I've watched pretty much everybody. I have watched everyone at least a little bit on the board for Notre Dame, so everyone that Notre Dame has offered. Some guys more in depth than others, but I have seen all 3 of the players. So Max Granville is 6'3", 215 pounds. Marco Jones is listed 6'4", 205. And Anthony Williams, I think, is 6'3", 210, somewhere in that ballpark. I actually just talked to Anthony Williams. I have a little bit of an intel piece on him, but Notre Dame stays in contact with him consistently. They also talk to Marco Jones a lot. I like both of their skill sets being the true Viper types that we're looking for. Guys that can rush the passer, but also drop into coverage and really be kind of a hybrid type of player potentially. The other guy, Max Granville, I like his film. I think he's bendy. I think he's explosive. But as of right now, I don't think Notre Dame is pushing for Max Granville. There's been very limited communication between Granville and Notre Dame as of right now. Could that change? For sure. But I think that out of those 3 guys you mentioned, I think Notre Dame is a little bit more pushing for Anthony Williams and Marco Jones of the world, and not as much as Granville right now. Oh, I just made Brandon sad because I know he loves Max Granville. I'm sorry, Brandon. I didn't mean to upset you there, man. Just putting the intel out there, sir. Hey, man, I'm sorry.
It is what it is. You don't make it up. You just report it.
Irish Gordianot says, when was the last time the linebacker room was this loaded? It's a great question, Vince. I mean, because I'm curious if Irish Gordianot's including the 2024 class into this conversation, because then you're talking about the last 3 classes would be Jalen Sneed, Junior Tuilamaka, who's playing Viper now, Joshua Burnham, and Nolan Ziegler. And then you have Drake Bowen, Preston Zinter, Jay Nosberry, and then you're going to follow that up with Teddy Rizak, Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa, and Bodie Cahoon. And Jalen Sneed, I think I forgot to mention Jalen Sneed in there as well, who's fantastic. I mean, that's crazy, Vince. I mean, if we're just talking about pure talent in a room, that is going to be –
yeah.
I mean, that's probably the most talent that I can remember in my lifetime, personally. That I can remember.
The deepest talent, right?
Teams.
I mean,
yes.
The deepest talent. I mean, they of course, they've had guys that individually are really, really good, but it's the deepest talent that I can remember because it was always one really, really good guy and then some good guys. You know what I mean? This is –
yeah, it was
feels deep, man.
It was like Manti Te'o, right? But Manti would be followed by Carlo Calabrese, who's solid, but like
Yeah.
he's not that guy, right?
Right.
Jalen Smith and Joe Schmidt next to him, right? Like it's just there's an absence of talent as far as depth, I think, at times. I think in 2024, when those guys show up with the class of what they've done the last three years, and that's not even counting if like JD and a couple of these senior linebackers return for another year. But if they do, I mean, that's the most talent. Again, we're talking about talent versus production. So like we'll see how productive it ends up being. But just straight talent, that's a pretty ridiculous class. That's the best that's the best room that I've seen in my lifetime, I think.
Well, and what obviously I wouldn't say worries me, but it's something that you recruit all this talent. There's only so many snaps to go around, right? So, I mean, you have to assume somebody's going to transfer out, somebody's going to change positions, all of these different things. But as it sits right now, this is an extremely talented group top to bottom. Extremely.
Sorry, I couldn't hit the.
Uh-oh. All right. Not hearing you, Ryan. Okay. So I think you may have to jump back and jump. I don't know what you got to do to figure out your sound. But we've got a question here from Terry Gillery. Should I buy an 85-inch TV for football season, or is that overkill? It's never overkill to have a gigantic TV, especially during football season. So you want to make sure that you do absolutely that. If you can afford it, you get it, okay? I don't have room for an 85-inch television anywhere in my house. I could make room if I had to, but there's no way the wife is approving the 85-inch television, especially if I say, oh, but it's for football season. Yeah, there's no way. So if you can make it happen, dude, like you need to make it happen. I absolutely think that that's the case. So I know there was a lot of discussion about which TV you should get and all of those different things, and that's awesome. But I'm telling you, man, if you can swing it, I don't know if you're single or whatever, if you can swing it, man, you got to do it. The bigger, the better when it comes to TVs. That's always been my my go-to when it comes to that kind of stuff. All right. So while we wait for Ryan to get back, let me see if there's something in here that I can answer with authority. I know there was one in here. Here we go. This will be a fun one here. Ryan, are you back?
I don't know, man. Can you hear me?
Good? Yes, I can hear you. So just in time for Justin Knox. And he has an interesting question here that I think we can both take a stab at here. He says, chances the next season starting quarterback currently plays at another university.
I'm going to say chances that happens.
So let's give a percent.
I'll say like 15%, like something low, I think.
Okay.
Justin, I think it's always possible because anytime that you're going to lose a quarterback like Sam Hartman, there's going to be obviously a void that is put in there, right? And then you're going to be in a situation where, because we're talking about a starting quarterback, we're not talking about depth. I think that there's a pretty high chance that there's a quarterback that comes in that's for depth purposes, right? Like I think that that's pretty high. But I think for a starting quarterback, I really think that you're going to have Kenny Minchie as a redshirt freshman. You're going to have CJ Carr coming in. I think it's more about insurance at that point. And I would hope that you're about, like let's let the young guys play. Let's develop them properly. I would say that it's a lower percentage that it's a starting quarterback that comes in. But if you're just asking quarterbacks that come into transfer portal as depth, I don't know, like 70%, like it would be a lot higher than like my 15% for a starting quarterback.
I'm going to say the chances of them getting a quarterback that's playing for another university right now are very high, like 75%. Like I think they're definitely going to bring in somebody. I definitely believe that. How the season goes, like, is somebody going to get some significant playing time if there happens to be an injury to Sam Hartman? Are they just going to be able to show what they can do with the second team and the third team during practice? All of those things combined. How this season goes will dictate what kind of a transfer quarterback that they're going to bring in. I think ideally they would bring in somebody with a couple of years of eligibility, obviously, or you bring in somebody who is cool to come in because they want to get a free master's degree from the University of Notre Dame and hold a clipboard.
like Hunter Johnson did at Clemson, or like
Right.
Tristan Gebbia is doing at Ohio State, right? Like one of those
Right.
kids, like they've played a little bit. They can maybe get you out of a football game, but like they're not coming in to be starting quarterbacks.
Exactly. And they know that. Like that's the conversation you have with them. Like, hey, you're going to come in here. You're going to provide depth. We trust you if we have to hand things over, but that's not the plan. You know what I mean? And I could definitely see that be the case. So I would put this at about 20%. Because I just don't know how this year is going to go with those guys. There's Sean and I had this argument the other day about, if Tyler Buckner would have stayed, how good would you feel about the chances at 24 at quarterback? I said I'd feel a lot better. And his argument was he barely has more experience than the other two guys that are going to be competing for the job, or the other three guys that are going to be competing for the job. Okay, I can see that. I can see that argument. I would still feel a heck of a lot better if Tyler was here going into 24.
More options, man. More options gives you a better chance. I'm a law of averages guy, man. So
absolutely, man.
More talented players, better chance you have. 100%.
Absolutely. So my hope is that they bring somebody in like what you talked about. It's going to be a backup. It's an insurance policy, that type of thing. And that one of the three guys that are going to be scholarship players on the roster that we know about are going to be the starter, whoever that happens to be, let the best man win, as they say. So
100% agree completely.
So we do have another super chat here, Ryan.
Super chat. Oh, we already answered this one.
Did we already answer this one? Oops.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me pull that one out there.
We got Tyler Evans some more screen love though, man, which I love.
He deserves it.
Anthony Solomon, thank you so much, Anthony. Thanks for another great show today. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that you're enjoying it.
Man. Thanks, Anthony. Okay, here's one from Josh.
Josh Miller, how bad did the coaching staff and Notre Dame fans need this commitment? I would say this, Josh. I think that the negative has been a little bit overblown as far as, like, I understand that Notre Dame missed out on Justin Scott. Like, I get that one, right? I understand. I understand that they weren't able to move the needle with Elijah rushing as much as they would have hoped during the official visit. I get that. I understand that there was some negative in there. But there was also a lot of positive. There was. And I feel like we missed the boat on some of the positive. Like, Bronte Johnson was a guy who's a top 100 caliber player, top 150 caliber player in the state that committed to Notre Dame. It's just like no one cares, right? And it's just like, that's one of the more talented safeties that you have gotten in years. Like, he's a really good football player. But I will say this. There has been a couple negative things that have happened, obviously, with the Scott stuff and everything that's going on. So, yes, I think Notre Dame fans needed it. I think that the general program needed it because there were just – I think more than anything, you just lost Justin Scott to Ohio State. You needed it to be like, hey, Ohio State, if we are going toe-to-toe, we can win some, right? Like, we can kind of hold our chest up in that conversation. So, yeah, I think everyone needed it. I think that it's a little bit overblown how much, right? But I do think that they did need it, no doubt.
Sure, it's all perception. I mean, from a fan standpoint, the perception was needed. I'll say that, right? The reality, everything is fine. Like I wasn't overly worried. Well, now I would have been upset if they didn't get him, of course, because he's a huge get. I mean, there's a reason we're so excited that they got him in the first place. There would have been disappointment if they didn't get him, right? And so but I also think a lot of it is fan perception. And there is a lot of pessimism out there when it comes to Notre Dame recruiting, and they've been burned in the past. And I get it. I understand it. I get it. But man, there's a lot of positive to be excited about. I mean, this is currently, I believe the last time I looked, this is a top 5 class at Notre Dame. Like, or at the very least
by rivals, they're number 4, I believe, right now. Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, one group has them top 5 and then the other group has them top 7. Either way, this is a really good recruiting class, people. Like, there's a lot to be excited about. You're not going to win every battle. No. That you have to go into that understanding that you're not going to win every battle. And a lot of those battles you're going to lose to teams that are big time, that are around here, Michigan, Ohio State. Like, if you're going to lose, you're going to lose to them. But if you're going to win, you're probably going to beat them. So, you got to take the good with the bad, and you can't just get all down in the dumps when you miss one. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I really think that there's been a lot more good than bad. It's just we're hyper-focusing on the bad. I get it, right? Because I am a fan. I'm a Notre
Right.
Dame fan at the core, so I understand completely why that comes up. But I do think that it gets a little over the top. I mean, Archer's comment, Ryan, don't talk about a level-headed approach to following recruiting. That's not allowed. And it's funny, man. It's just I have never seen, because obviously, I've been covering recruiting now for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Before this, Vince, I followed recruiting. I followed what happened, but I never got like super like upset about recruiting, right? Like I
Didn't
wasn't
ruin your
that-
day when somebody wouldn't come to Notre Dame.
It didn't. No, it didn't ruin my day. I mean, I'm disappointed, sure. Like there's a little bit of disappointment, but like, man, there are some fans that just lose their minds about recruiting. It's pretty insane, man. It's pretty insane. But again, to each their own. I'm not judging, but it's just it's been eye-opening.
This is actually really funny by Raymond. He goes, because it literally get my feelings hurt by recruiting sometimes, and it's not realistic. It's like he knows it's not realistic, but he still gets his feelings hurt when something doesn't go his way, which I think is hilarious.
I made the mistake of going into the 247 stream yesterday when Kyngstonn was making a decision beforehand, Vince, and it was just Notre Dame fans, Ohio State fans, and USC fans just yelling at each other,
hating on each other, man.
Just like so much, man. I'm just like, guys, I almost hopped in there, but I was like, nah, I don't want that smoke right now. Like, I'm good, man. I'm good.
There was a couple times where I almost responded to a couple of different things, and luckily on YouTube it says, you have to be subscribed to the channel in order to comment. I'm not subscribed to the 247 channel, so I couldn't comment unless I clicked the subscribe button. I was like, nope. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. So you're saving me from not commenting and making, a fool of myself. So that's bad, so it's good.
You should have commented on there. No one can make fun of you, man.
I'm glad that I jumped in our chat at one point during your guys' show. I jumped in there. I was like, guys, what are we doing here? Settle down.
So funny, man. So funny.
My gosh.
From Lamreke. Lamreke? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I mean, I feel like I've said that 6 times today. I'm just terrible at names today. But their question is, with the kind of world-class track and field athletes Marcus Freeman is bringing in, do you see a return to allowing kids to run track? The big-time programs do. Notre Dame used to, but it's dropped since the BK era.
Well, there was kids that ran track in the BK era.
Like Troy Pride, right?
Troy Pride is the first one that comes to mind. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did Braden Lindsay run track at Notre Dame? I know he was really good in high school.
I know he was going to, because he was definitely going to run track if he went to Oregon. I don't know if he actually pulled the trigger because it's not reported on when these guys are running, because they usually run during the indoor season. They're not really running during the outdoor season because it's right in the middle of track season, outdoor track, or spring ball. Right. So I don't know.
There are some insane track numbers though of this class. I mean, literally Cam Williams and Logan Saldate, who are now two of the wide receiver commits in the class, Vince, they are both 24-plus foot long jumpers. They could legitimately jump in college. And they only did it for 1 year each. Logan came on the show and was like, I mess around with
junior year, decided to go out for track.
Second in the state of California. Like, what are we talking about, man? What are we talking about? So, they could do it. I don't think Logan said something about like, he'd be open to it potentially, but like it didn't sound like there was like necessarily something that he was planning on doing. If Carter Nelson would have committed to Notre Dame, that would have been one I would have had close eyes on, because that kid was just a ridiculous track and field athlete. But I don't anticipate too many of them testing that water. Like, I really don't. I mean, it's pretty rare to have a 2-sport athlete. And honestly, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to manage it. If being a student athlete at Notre Dame wasn't tough enough in one sport, trying to do 2 and being a student, like, that's tough, man. That's really tough.
I know that there's a couple of 2-sport athletes that play football. Like there's a couple lacrosse kids that walk on the football team.
Well, Jordan Faison is going to be doing both as well. He's a 2023 walk-on at Notre Dame. So crazy, man. He had a scholarship offer to play football at Iowa, and he decided to come just do lacrosse and walk on at Notre Dame for football. He's a primary lacrosse player, and he's walking on the football team. And the other day I was talking to a lacrosse coach when I was doing my thing over at Notre Dame for the summer, and he's like, he's a great athlete. He's like,
really kind of hoping he doesn't play football, because then he's on scholarship at football, and then the whole thing reverses, and he's a football player first and then a lacrosse player. So he's he's a great lacrosse player. Like, they're super excited to have him. So
man. He's a national ranked lacrosse player. He was really good. He was a good football player too, man. He played like triple option quarterback in high school. He was good.
Did he really?
He's going to play slot for Notre Dame or play wide receiver for Notre Dame. So, yeah, he's one. Somebody just said Micah Bell in the chat. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know if Micah. I think he's toying with the option of doing track, because he's a sub 21 200-meter runner. Like, he is smoke, dude. Like 28.9. He ran the 200 this past year. He was also a 24-foot long jumper and a 10 400-meter guy. So he could legitimately do track on the college level at pretty much anywhere he wants to go. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up doing it.
Wow. Well, I know, and I also know that there is a specialist, and I don't know if he's a punter or a kicker. I would assume kicker, but that he's also on the soccer team. And so I know he's a walk-on the football team, so soccer is his primary. But yeah, so there's a couple, but it is not an easy thing to do. I mean, we've seen baseball, a couple baseball. Drake Bowen, obviously, he plays for the baseball team. So there's another one. So there's a handful of kids that do it for sure. But it's very difficult to do it.
Torrey Hunter Jr. comes to mind as well. He was a guy, not for football, but who was the Pat Connaughton, right? Pat Connaughton did
baseball and basketball.
Yeah.
The Golden Tate, Jeff Samardzija, they both did baseball, obviously.
Oh, yeah. How do I forget about Samardzija? Literally,
I know, right? He ended up going and playing baseball as opposed to football. So, yeah, he's definitely one of them.
I'm always so curious what Samardzija would have been as an NFL wide receiver, man.
Me too.
I just think he would have been really good. I think he would have been
absolutely. Yeah, Cole Kmet played some. Yep, absolutely. Sharpley played baseball, ended up going – well, he went pro in baseball. He was in the minors for a couple of years. And so there's actually a bunch, but it is not an easy thing to do. And then you throw in all the academics and all of that. It is very tough. So,
yes.
All right. Here we go. Another one from Brandon.
Brandon said, any intel on Cooper Perry visiting for the July barbecue at all? Brandon, I do have intel. He will not, unfortunately, be able to take the visit. He's already been to campus twice this offseason, just with football starting. There's just it's going to be tough for him to be able to make the trip out. So he will not be at the barbecue, but I would expect if he doesn't get back for the summer, to him definitely be at least one game visit this year.
Beautiful.
You need to watch his film, by the way, Vince, if you get a chance. He is like, you could tell you could watch 3 clips of him and be like, I know exactly who he models his game after. He's a 6'2" white kid that wears number 10. I'm like, that is Cooper Kupp. He wants to be Cooper Kupp so bad, which is totally fine.
That's funny
because he's fantastic. Frank Sarah said, will Notre Dame try to get another wide receiver for 2024? No, I don't think so. They have 3 wide receivers in the 2024 class, unless someone just legit wants to just throw his hat in the ring late in the season or before signing day. I mean, I always have that conversation, but I don't anticipate them going to 4. No, I think it's more likely they look at a second tight end than a 4th wide receiver.
Makes sense. Yeah, because they were fine at 3 before Isaiah Canyon bailed from the class, and then they wanted to fill his spot. Now, I was personally surprised that they did it as fast as they did, but at the same time, I mean, after talking to Logan on the show, I was like, okay, I mean, he made their decision a lot easier. I will say that.
Yep. Verified 40 and got to show the route tree, and
I thought that was interesting. Now, see, that's a nice little peek behind the curtain, by the way. And I don't know if anybody has not watched that interview, but Notre Dame requested these different things. So he basically had to go to his football field and show them that he could run certain routes and do certain things and verify how fast he was. And they did all of this without him stepping foot on campus. Like that.
Yes.
That is mind-blowing to me that he was able to show them enough on video that they were like, yeah, let's go. Let's get you in the class. Like, that's crazy.
I wish that Cooper Flanagan wasn't enrolled at Notre Dame, because I would have loved to get his perspective on Logan, because they played 7-on-7 ball together. But he's a Notre Dame guy now, so I can't.
He's off limits.
Yeah, exactly. Want to get in trouble, man.
I hear you. No, but that was very interesting to me that they did all of that via video, and they're like, "Yep, let's go, let's do this."
Yes,
crazy.
Yeah, man, crazy backstory. From Mr. 2.0 says, do we know who initiated the alumni conversation with Kyngstonn? Has this been a normal thing of recruiting to this point, to this extent? If not, will we see more of it? Good way to sell for 40. So, great question. we didn't go super in depth about this, but Brian kind of talked about it a little bit. Basically, Kyngstonn did reach out to Notre Dame and USC and Ohio State for that matter, and wanted to talk to the alumni base and some football players that had, been at Notre Dame. So I don't want to disclose names because I think that I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. But yes, he did talk to some alumni from all three spots, and was just I think that's the greatest thing about that kid is he wants so many different perspectives, right? Like it's not just about what he thinks; it's about what his parents think, what the coaches think, what the alumni think, what the players think. Like he wanted so many different perspectives to help him get clarity to make that decision. So yes, he was able to talk to some former players of each of those programs and just get a little bit more of their perspective.
Here's what I will say to that. And I heard some whispers of some names, and obviously we're going to keep that to ourselves, but it is amazing to me because this is the first time I have heard that this is the kind of thing that they've been doing. And a lot of that can be traced back to Marcus Freeman and his relationship with former players and the fact that he has tried to cultivate that relationship so that those guys are on speed dial, man. And they're like, anything we can do to help the program, that's what we're going to do. So Marcus Freeman's taking him up on the offer, man. He's like, hey, talk to this kid and tell him how coming to Notre Dame has set you up for your life, not just for football. And this is Vince talking 100%. I just don't think that was possible to the extent that it is possible now under the last regime.
Right.
That those relationships just weren't cultivated the way they are now.
You're correct, man. I agree 100%. It's very interesting. It's very interesting how recruiting has evolved. And I think it's because the question was for Mr. 2.0, who initiated that? It was Kyngstonn. Kyngstonn wanted those perspectives, which I think tells you all you need to know about the young man. Tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did it with the other schools too, from what I understand. And so, that tells you how the network really played a part in this decision-making process, which I think is awesome, by the way.
Yep, agree. From Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, says, Ryan, are you following players still on Flip Watch with a realistic chance of it happening? Justin Scott, Caleb Beasley, who in your opinion do we have a better chance at flipping? Yep. I mean, Josh, they're still on my board, right? Because I know that Notre Dame is actively recruiting them. As long as Notre Dame is actively recruiting them, there are players that I'm checking in on. There are players that I'm following for every move that they make. That sounds really creepy, but it is what it is type of thing, right? What visits are they taking? Who are they talking to? Who are they following? I'm basically a private investigator at this point. So yes, I will be following them. I think that they have a better chance at flipping Caleb Beasley currently than they do Justin Scott, but I think that both are possible if things go the certain way, but I would say that Caleb Beasley is much more likely than Scott as of right now.
Nice. I agree with you based on the stuff that I hear you guys talking about and mailbag questions that you've answered and reading your intel and all of that. I agree. If I was going to rank the two, I would agree that it just feels like Beasley is just more open to the conversation. Yep. And I'm not saying that Justin Scott's not open to the conversation because I don't know, but what I'm hearing, Beasley isn't telling Notre Dame, stop calling me. He's open to the advances and open to the conversation. If you're open to the conversation, I'm sorry, you're not committed. Like that's how I read it. That's how Vince reads it. But if you're listening, then you're still open. You know what I mean? Like if you're married and you're still, maybe, listening to other gals is like, he's not really committed to that marriage. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what this feels like to me. So maybe at the end of the day, he ends up sticking with who he's married to, but it just doesn't feel that way to me. But who knows?
Marriage advice from Vince. That's why you tuned into the podcast today. I love it. I love it.
That's right. It's 19 years, but right there. 19. Well, it'll be 19 years in a week.
19 years, really? Wow, man.
I know,
wow.
Right? I know I look so much younger than that. It's true. I got
I'm
married
at 6,
when I was 5.
so I feel like I have a bunch of gray hairs right now. So,
My wife told me this morning, watching the Today Show, and they said that the sun can give you gray hairs faster. So she's like, you need to stay out of the sun because you're going gray, buddy. I thought you
were talking about your kids, like your son. Like, it gives you gray hairs real quick.
Well, that too. That too. This is the SUN. The SON has he claims a lot of these. I can promise you that. But
did you see what Irish Cordy just said in the chat? That's fantastic.
Every fortnight. Wow.
Fortnite. Oh,
I'm gonna pull that up just so everybody knows what we're laughing about here. Arish Gordia Knott says Vince's number one piece of marriage advice: have a kid every fortnight. I mean,
I started crying. That was fantastic. I was good. Good job, man.
keeps
Good job.
you young.
It was wonderful.
That's great.
God.
Okay, all right. Let's actually get to some stuff that's important. All right, there we go.
Josh Buffo, motivation business banker. Who's the 2025 defensive lineman that is this year's Justin Scott's Notre Dame that we are in on? Who should we be watching for in the defensive line class? Are you asking me who's the guy that they should get, but they're not going to end up getting? I mean, that's the Justin Scott, right? I mean, I don't want to answer that one, Josh. I will give you a couple names that I think are important defensive linemen to Notre Dame in the class because I think that that's a better way to go. Obvious, Davion Dixon is committed to Notre Dame in the 2025 class, star defensive tackle out of Miami, Florida. They also really like Jarquez Carter, who's going to be visiting July 30th. He is another defensive tackle out of the state of Florida. I think they also like Landon Rink a ton, who's out of the state of Texas. At defensive tackle, defensive end, I mean, there was just a long list of talented players, man. I think that guys like Christopher Burgess out of Illinois are very high on Notre Dame's list. I think they really like Bryce Davis, who they're trying to get to come on campus. Nathaniel Marshall's a guy they like, but I just don't think that they have much momentum with currently. There's a lot, man. There's a lot of really good football players, but a couple of my favorites are definitely Christopher Burgess. He's a talented dude. And I really like Bryce Davis out of the state of North Carolina. He's a really good football player.
It's an interesting perspective question from Ian.
Ian says, how weird does it feel to be talking about the class of 2025, but we haven't even played the 2023 season yet? I know, man. Well, Ian, even weirder, right? This is even weirder. Vince, the 2023 recruits who we haven't seen play a snap yet will be juniors by the time all the kids we talked about get on campus.
Are enrolling. Yeah.
Yes. Like, it's gross, man. Like, Jalen Sneed and Steven Angeli in that class are going to be seniors by the time the 2025 kids get to campus.
That's nuts, man. But how long ago? Like, CJ Carr hasn't even enrolled at Notre Dame. Like, he hasn't even signed his letter of intent, and he already seems like old news. Like, that's
he hasn't even played a senior season yet. Like,
it's like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing in this day and age of recruiting? Like, it used to be like the banquet was the big recruiting weekend, which was after the season. It was in December, was the big banquet that they would have.
yes.
No one was really committed, the whole deal, right? They would have this banquet, and then like a month and a half later, they signed and they enter, Notre Dame. Like, we are 2 years ahead of that now. 2 years.
Vince, we had someone in the chat yesterday during a mailbag, and it wasn't not making fun of them, but their question was, is Rico Flores still a part of the Notre Dame plan moving forward? It's like, he's a true freshman who just played in the spring.
He's an early enrollee. Like, his Notre Dame classmates, like his actual classmates that aren't football players, haven't even stepped foot on campus.
Not even there yet. I know. Not even there. Like,
He's already an afterthought. Man. It's, yeah. And Raymond says, and now we do 4-hour shows a day on it. I mean, he's not wrong. That's the thing. He's not wrong, which is crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy. But hey, it's the world we live in, man. It's the world we live in. We're talking about kids that are only halfway through their high school careers right now.
I say, though, because my mind is going in a million different ways, Vince, when CFB Nation gets a little more up and going on the podcasting front, we need to expand it into a lifestyle podcast where you could talk about marriage the whole time and different advice. Yes, make it happen. Make it happen. Marriage time with Vince.
Oh my god!
You can bring your wife on sometimes for interviews.
My wife might refute my credentials on that one, but let's see how that goes.
Love it. Tyler, misguided passion binge. How does the Viper board look for Notre Dame? 2025, I'm assuming, right, Tyler? Because 2024 is over at this point. I mean, at the Viper position anyway. It's interesting. I think that right now I'm trying to still kind of try to really hone in on who's going to end up being a Viper and who's not. Because again, like, Justin Hill could be a Viper. A couple of the linebackers I talked earlier in the show could potentially be Vipers. I think that they are in a better spot currently, in my opinion, with big ends right now, like Christopher Burgess, Bryce Davis, like that's mold than the pure Viper types. Gabe Kaminsky's a kid that's more of a Viper. He's out of the state of Illinois that they're in a decent spot with early on. CJ May, they have a little bit of momentum with, but for the most part, it's the Viper types. I mean, the big end types, that they're in a better spot with. So I think this is a little bit to be determined. Ask me this in a couple months after we really start to understand of who's visited in the summer or who's going to be visiting in the fall for sure. And then I think the Viper board will be a little bit more understandable. Right now, I think some guys are we're talking about 16-year-olds, right? And like, how does their body develop? Will they stay the same size? Are there going to be linebackers that were shifting over to the Viper board? Like, all that stuff changes very quickly.
And I have a feeling some of those guys that we talked about earlier on, when we were talking about the linebackers, I mean, they're 6'3", 225 as sophomores. Some of those guys are going to morph into Vipers. I mean, that's just the natural way of things, right? And so it's going to be interesting. You got to kind of let it play out, for lack of a better term. You got to let it play out and see where these guys are going to end up and what they're going to look like, because these guys are not physically mature by any stretch of the imagination at 16. I mean, it's crazy to think that they would be, but
sure is, man. Sure is.
All right, here we go. This is a good question. This is a good question because that number seems to grow every year, and it's starting to be more than half the class. It feels like. It seems like less kids are enrolling in the summertime.
I think 2024 there were 13 that ended up being early
big
release.
Number.
Some crazy number like that. So I mean, Mr. 2.0. Do we know who's enrolling early so far in the 2024 class? Of guys that I definitely know, CJ Carr, yes. To be determined on the running backs. Cam Williams, I believe, will be one as well. I think Micah Gilbert also will be, if I remember correctly. Logan Saldate said that, yes, his plan was to enroll early. Not sure about Jack Larson as of right now. Peter Jones, I believe, is a kid that wanted to enroll early. So I'm just working down the list of Notre Dame commits. Cole Mullins, I believe, was going to be an early enrollee. Logan Thomas, I believe, was going to be an early enrollee. Bryce Young, I believe, but don't hold me to that one. Sean Sevillano is definitely an early enrollee. There's no doubt about that one. The linebackers, Bodie's in between, I believe, at the moment. I think it depends on how a couple things go. Kyngstonn, I would be shocked. I haven't asked him directly yet, but I would be shocked if he wasn't an early enrollee, just based upon everything I know. After that, Kennedy Urlacher, I believe, is an early enrollee. Carson Hobbs can't early enroll. His school does not allow that to happen. And Leonard Moore, I'm not 100% sure. So it's a big number again. It's going to be a big number. We will definitely have a list like we did last season as far as when we know guys are for sure going to be early enrollees. We'll have that out there. But again, I think it was like 13 in the 2024 class was early enrollees, which is pretty insane.
Well, working in a high school, I can tell you it is much easier these days to get out early if you do what you need to do, and there's online courses, there's different things that you can do to make sure that you're done in plenty of time. It's not that hard, and you don't have to make that decision like your sophomore year to get out early. You know what I mean? Like it is not a difficult task to do if you want to do it. It's just, do you want to miss out on some of the social aspects of, your second semester of your senior year? And
which is tough for some kids,
which is very tough. Like I get that part of it. I really do. I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff that happens the second semester of your senior year. You know what I mean? Senioritis involved, but
and it's going to be nothing but football and being a Notre Dame athlete for the next 4 or 5 years of your life, right? Like I remember talking to Sullivan Absher, and like Sullivan, I think could have been an early enrollee if he chose to, but he wanted to experience everything for a senior. And I'm like, I totally get that. Makes total sense. For sure.
100%. I would have a hard time convincing my kid if that was this. If I had a 4-star kid and he was going to be whatever, I was like, I mean, it's up to you, but these are the list of things that you're going to miss. And are you cool with that? Because you're never going to get that back ever. No. And for a chance, I guess, to play early, I guess is the best opportunity. But I don't know. It would be tough. It would be tough
It's
for me
tough.
to advise my kid to do that, And then
Definitely
selfishly as a
positive and
parent,
negatives. Yeah.
selfishly as a parent to miss out on all that as a parent too. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? Because if the kid plays a spring sport, for example, and he's played that spring sport all through high school, you miss senior night, you miss prom, you miss, you might not miss graduation. You might be able to make it for that, but you miss a lot of those milestone moments, So anyway, I will get off my emotional high horse for a moment, but that's a lot of stuff to miss. I will just say
wrong.
that.
You're not wrong. We had Lucky Ducks 512 said, who are 2 recruits Notre Dame needs to land in 2025 that would have the most impact of perception of Notre Dame recruiting outside of quarterback? Outside of quarterback, that's funny. It's interesting.
So this is a perception question. So like nationally, like the national perception, like you're going to have to beat out. I don't mean to step on your toes, and I don't have anybody name wise, but like it's going to have to be somebody that Alabama, Ohio State, he's got all the top offers. You know what I mean? It's going to have to be, and it's going to come down to like Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, and then they pick Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like there's going to have to be a couple of those, I think, for national respect or perception.
Yeah. I think that I'm going to stick to the Ohio State theme for a second, Vince.
Okay.
There's a couple Ohio kids on the board. I think Dorian Brewer or Justin Hill are 2 kids that are in Ohio feeders, right? Or in schools that Ohio State usually has very good success in. If you get one of those kids, I think that is a pretty notable thing. And I think people would look at that like, oh, wow, they sold 2 kids out of the state of Ohio that
Yeah.
they don't usually gets that are usually Ohio State through and through. Like that would be a massive one. Other than that, I mean, I think it's like if you can go down and I don't even want to say that. I'm going to stick to the Ohio guys. I think Ohio is a big one for me. I mean, because I'm thinking like if they get like Antonio Coleman out of Alabama, like that would be notable, right? It's like if they continue a string in Georgia, like that would be notable. But I think for me, it's again, I always come back to in order to get to the level of the Georgias and Alabamas of the world, you got to get past Ohio State first, right? Like you got to be able to do that. So if you're able to go into Ohio and get Dorian Brew, a player that Ohio State wants, like it's notable to me. It's very notable.
Irish Gordian, I think he likes to mess with me, but I'll answer it anyway. Go ahead.
Okay. Vince, do you ever do a vocal warm-ups before announcing or doing podcasts? It's a great question.
No, my vocal warm-up is I just talk all the time. So there's no warm-up to do. It's always warm. It's always ready to roll. So no, not at all. I usually warm up by so from announcing. So that means I'm going to a school and I'm doing, color, whatever, right? How I warm up is I hit the what do you call it? The hospitality room, hit that pretty hard, find some free stuff, eat it up, drink it up, and get a nice full belly. Like that's how I warm up for stuff. Cause you got to get in there early. Otherwise the good stuff's gone.
So you're not gargling salt water or anything to get your vocal cords ready? You're not doing that? All right.
No.
All right.
I don't really have I don't have an issue. Like some people have an issue like losing their voice and stuff like that. More, but that's never really been an issue for me, much to my wife's dismay. Like I don't lose my voice, so I'm always here. I'm always ready for battle, as they say. I got 8 shows this week, so if I'm gonna lose my voice, it'll be this week. So talk to me Friday afternoon, and we'll see how things are going. How about that,
man? I love to look at my wife's face sometimes where she's just like, I could tell she's just like, dude, please stop talking for a few minutes, like just a couple minutes,
all the time. All the time. I'm not allowed to sing in the house either. I don't know how the rules are.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have ADHD, so I randomly start singing sometimes, and my wife hates it. And what's funny? My 2.5-year-old also does the same exact thing. She just starts randomly singing. Like we'll just be walking in the room, and then she'll just be like A B C D. Be like, no one even asked you to sing that, man. Like you're just randomly doing it.
I love it.
There were 5 in the bed, and the little one said, I'm just like, what are you doing?
That is awesome. That is fantastic. That's how I'm undiagnosed, I would say. But I do the exact same thing. So, yeah.
It's so funny, man. I was a special ed teacher, and I was like,
were you really?
Obviously, there's a lot of ADHD kids that like I worked with and stuff. And I'm just like, through the years, I'm just like, wow, I had really bad ADHD, and I never realized it.
I was that kid right there.
I was that kid. I was 100% that kid. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I know that feeling. I've definitely had that feeling. So yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
man. Which is now I'm so contradictory now because I'm just like, focus. You have to focus. And I'm just like, wait, I didn't focus. What are you talking about, man?
And look where I'm at.
Yeah, look at all I got here now.
That's great.
Great show today from Ed3. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. Thank you
awesome.
So much.
Yes, thanks, Ed3. Very much appreciate that.
Beezer12 Washing Beard. Which coaches are the most excited to see coach at fall camp, Vince?
Ooh, Joe Rudolph is by far the number one. I want to see how that transition's going from Harry Heastand and really also from Quinn. I mean, it's, Heastand was only here for a year, right? And so a lot of these guys were coached by both, and now they're going to get their third offensive line coach in a matter of years. And so I want to see him for sure, no doubt about that. I do want to see Jared Parker and how the offense looks, right? I'm not worried about how Jared Parker coaches, but I'm more not concerned isn't the right word. I'm excited to see what the offense looks like under his tutelage, right? I will also say that I want to see the new quarterbacks coach, Gino, right?
Gino Gaduli.
I want to see what he's up to and kind of what that relationship looks like, because we've seen Tommy Reese as the quarterbacks coach / offensive coordinator for the last few years. He does a lot with the offense. He's not necessarily in the ear of the quarterbacks at practice. You know what I mean? And so this is going to be an opportunity to see Gino, working with those younger guys while Sam is doing his thing with the first team offense, that kind of a thing. So, what does that relationship look like? The defensive guys have all been here.
Sure.
The only thing that I want to see is how much one-on-one, hands-on is Al Golden doing with the linebackers, right? Or is it Bulla the vast majority of the time? That'll be an interesting kind of thing to see how that works out. So I just named like half the coaching staff. So
that's what it's there for, though, man.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
well,
so I'll kind of be keeping track of different ones each day, I think.
Gino Gaduli is a really good mention because I feel like we don't talk about him enough just because he's just the quarterback coach now. We're used to a quarterback coach also being the offensive coordinator. So we're hyper focusing on the full string of responsibilities there.
Yep.
But I really want to see him because he's got obviously a couple young quarterbacks in the wings, right? He's got a redshirt freshman in Steve Angeli. He's got a true freshman in Kenny Minchie. And he also has Sam Hartman, who is a guy that he's inheriting that was very successful at his previous school. So how can he take him to a next level? Can he get his trust early on in the process? I think that those things all really matter. And also, I've seen a bunch of mic'd up stuff of Gino in the past, and he's a very entertaining guy. So, I would just love to see how he interacts with everyone.
No, absolutely. It's one of the many things I'm excited about actually getting out to practice. The only thing, like I said earlier, I'm not looking forward to is the heat. It's going to be really hot, and there's no air conditioning in the indoor facility, and that's not cool. That they didn't think of me. They didn't ask me when they made it, and I don't appreciate that. It's not cool.
And a question from Justin Knox: is NC State the most difficult game on the schedule outside of the top three? I think Duke is tougher than NC State's, but NC State's not an easy game.
It's the first test. That's the way I look at it, Ryan. I mean to step on your toes.
No, you're good.
I think Duke worries me more from an offensive standpoint. Maybe NC State's maybe a little bit more balanced, but they're the first road test for Notre Dame. And that's why they're a big deal to me personally. I'm not necessarily worried that Notre Dame's going to lose that game or any of those kinds of things, but they're the first real test of this team where we're going to see kind of what they're made of before we get to the Ohio State game. And I think that's why NC State stands out to me. The other ones, like Duke, for example, like you said, Pitt, maybe, those are more like trappish games because they're after the big three. And you can kind of, see how they could be trappish games. But NC State's going to be the first real test, I think.
I think Duke scares me more than those two just because I agree, NC State is definitely the first big test. They are a team that has some good defensive players coming back. Aiden White and Battle, Shaheem Battle, their other corner coming back. Peyton Wilson's coming back. They're going to be a good defense, which I think is going to be the first big test for Hartman. But the one thing that scares me about Duke is that they have a legitimate dual threat quarterback that worries me a little bit. Riley Leonard is a really talented kid. That's the type of kid that if he gets rolling, it's a tough kid to stop. Like that's the kid that scares me a little bit. So that's kind of where I go with Duke. But I think NC State's a good answer. I think Pitt is a really good answer because Pitt's just a pesky football team, man. Like they're a pesky football team. They're going to play good defense. They're going to block well. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, is Phil Dracovic the old Phil Dracovic, or is he just injury riddled?
Sure.
Phil at this point. So those 3 games I think are all very intriguing. I think that Riley Leonard personally scares me the most out of the quarterbacks on the schedule.
That's fair. No, I get it, man. And you know, there's going to be the old, you know, Notre Dame has trouble with mobile quarterbacks and, you know, that kind of a thing. And so that'll be definitely part of it moving forward. No doubt.
Vince, listen to this. Listen to this take though, and how insane it stands out. How insane it sounds, right? Outside of Caleb Williams for USC, who's a Raising Heisman Trophy winner, the best quarterback on the roster probably plays for Duke.
Wow.
I mean, on the schedule, probably plays for Duke.
Really?
I mean, because like who? Cade Klubnik's barely played, right? So at this point, Brandon Armstrong is coming off of a bad season for Virginia, transferring over to NC State. I mean, Phil Dracovic's coming off of a bad season and banged up the last 2 years.
Sure.
I mean, so yeah, I think Riley Leonard's the best quarterback on the schedule right now outside of Caleb Williams.
But does he have the tools around him? I mean, look, the job that Elko has done at Duke was amazing. I mean, the turnaround, it was really, really good. Can they sustain that? I think that's the biggest question for Duke, right? And we're going to have a little bit of answer to that going into that game. But, like, I think that's my biggest question about Duke is can they sustain that turnaround? And was it 9 wins last year? I want to say off the top of my head. Yeah. Can they sustain that for a second year? You know, that's we'll see. I like Mike Elko as a head coach.
I love Mike Elko.
No doubt about it. Yeah. Yep. So we'll see. That actually following Duke is going to be a very interesting ride, I think, this year for sure.
It is. ACC is kind of open, man. I mean, because
it is.
I think Clemson's going to be a little bit better offensively, obviously with Garrett Riley coming in and Cade Klubnik taking over quarterback. I think they'll be better. Florida State has a lot of hype, but like outside of that, man, like Miami's not very good. NC State's in a little bit of an offensive transition. How good are they going to be? Virginia's an absolute mess. Virginia Tech's an absolute mess. Like there's there is opportunity in front of Duke potentially this year.
Absolutely. All right, let's see here. Let's get to another one.
Gary Attrick, excuse me. Oh, Jerry Attrick. Got it. Abby visitor list only has.
The funniest part was you getting that. Like that was the best part of that whole thing. That was awesome.
Yeah. IB visitor list only has 20 players coming for the barbecue at the end of the month. I was expecting more to be visiting. How many have they had in the past for the type of event? It's actually a good number for the events. I think last year there was like 15-ish players that ended up making the trip. So 20 as of right now. I mean, we are, what's today? The 23rd? Is that what today is? The 24th.
Yep.
So we're sitting at the 24th. We still have 6 days. There's going to be some kids that decide to come last minute and do all that type of thing. So 20 plus is actually a really good number for that type of visitor list. And all of the kids that are on campus, most of them are making a return visit to Notre Dame and are in really good spots with Notre Dame as well. So I actually think I'm actually very excited about the list that we have for the 30th.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Like it's, you know, I'll be on campus that day. I might have to swing by, grab a burger, say hi to everybody. You know,
yeah, man,
it'd be fun.
Absolutely. Andrew Gilmore, is Notre Dame sending their playbook to CJ Carr so he can study ahead of enrolling?
Not yet.
Yeah, maybe they could do that. But Andrew, I do know that coaches obviously in their conversations in the open, you know, when they're able to have conversations with recruits, which as soon as they turn juniors, like full rail basically at that point, unless you're in a dead period. But they are able to sit down and just talk ball and start to really get to know them, but also talk about X's and O's and stuff. I mean, one thing Nate Roberts told me, and I put an article on him, kind of a season preview today. He talked about he now has the ability in open periods to sit down with Coach Parker and talk about the offense and roles and formations and things that they like to do offensively. So no, not a direct playbook, but they are getting the understanding of the system, and they are starting to develop that really expertise early on.
Right.
So they get it. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. But I don't think they're sending like, an old school like 3-ring binder in first class mail like that he's going to open up and just start studying. I mean, he has to worry about the playbook at his high school right now, not Notre Dame's.
I do think that they are. I do think that there are limitations to what they can do in that regard. Yes.
And there's also, let me just throw this out there. And I mean, just getting the playbook on paper is one thing.
Right.
Understanding what you're reading, and this isn't saying anything against CJ or anybody else for that matter, but there are so many variations of plays nowadays. Like if you listen to a play call in the NFL, it's not just a play. Like they literally tag
a million adjustments off of it.
Yes, adjustments, tags, formations, and all of these motions. And like, it's not like old school, like back in the day when you ran, okay, this is the play and this is what everybody does on this play, on this piece of paper. And there's an explanation at the bottom. You got the diagram at the top, memorize it. Like that's just not offense anymore. There are just so many variations and things you can do. And so them sending him the playbook, okay, it'd be cool, but like he'll have no idea what he's walking into without actually being coached and seeing all of that.
And also, we're talking about recruits that aren't signed on the dotted line. So, like,
that's a good point too.
Yeah, I mean, if a kid decommits, it's like, I have your playbook. That's
right.
Not great. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just not great. So, yeah.
Yeah, good call. Like that's actually a really, really good call. That's really smart. Okay, here's another one for us.
From NC Notre Dame fan, can you please explain why people are hyping up USC when they have not won anything? They lost the Pac-12 championship to Utah and lost the Sugar Bowl to Tulane. I mean, Vince, I would love your perspective on this, but I think it's the natural maturation from year 1 to year 2, right? I mean, you're going to look at it and say, Lincoln Riley overachieved in his first year, in my opinion.
Sure.
Second year, should take a step forward. You have the Heisman Trophy winner coming back. You have a lot of skill position players coming back, including Austin Jones, who ran over Notre Dame in their contest against them. They got some good wide receivers. They had a couple of transfer in. Dorian Singer from Arizona, for instance, is a really good player that transferred in from the University of Arizona. I mean, so there is continuity on the offense that I think is going to be a very interesting one. And then you obviously have your play caller, and Lincoln Riley. And defensively, they weren't good last year, but like they are bringing in more talents. I mean, you got Bear Alexander, you got Anthony Lucas. I think that their natural progression from year 1 to year 2 is going to happen. I do think USC is going to be a better team in 2024. 2023, excuse me. Is it a little bit over the top? Maybe. I mean, possibly, but like again, I don't want to hyper focus on a preseason ranking too much because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? It only matters when the games start and what happens by the end of the season. Sure. That's what matters. But I really do think that there is a natural maturation. They are going to be better than what they were in 2022, unless there's some type of string of injuries or something like that. USC is on the rise, as painful as that is to hear.
Well, they're better than they were under the last coaching staff. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to deny that. They're doing things in the transfer portal that haven't been done before. Let's be honest. I mean, outside of Colorado this year, I mean, they completely transformed their team legally, by the way. Same thing that Dion is doing up in Colorado. He's doing everything by the book, but some people don't like it, but that's the way they're doing it. So my biggest question would be, is the way that they're building their roster sustainable? Like, is it sustainable to hit the transfer portal every year and kind of turn things over and do all of that without being successful in high school recruiting?
Right.
If anybody's going to be successful, it's going to be Lincoln Riley at USC because they're right smack dab in a fertile recruiting ground. They've got all of that going for them. And, we've said it a bunch of times about Notre Dame. If Notre Dame goes out and wins this year, they're going to have a leg up in recruiting. It's the same thing with USC. They go out and win, double digits again, then they're pointed in the right direction and all these different things. They got a Heisman Trophy winner. Yep. They're going to have just as much of an opportunity as anybody else. Have they won anything yet? No. They have not won anything yet. That doesn't mean they won't. Archer had a very good point when he said Georgia hadn't won anything until they did. Same with Clemson. Teams can win things that they haven't been winning things in recent history. Absolutely correct. We'll see if USC is that team. I don't know that I'm convinced just yet because I'm not a huge proponent of building your team through the transfer portal. I don't know how that works with continuity and, building your foundation and all that. So I don't know that I'd want my foundation to be the transfer portal.
Right.
But if you're trying to do a quick turnaround, that's how you do it. Is it sustainable? We'll see. They still have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner throwing the ball. So,
like you said, fertile recruiting ground too. I mean, they get to keep guys like Kyngstonn and Viliamu-Asa. Oh, they didn't keep him, did they? It's a little,
well done.
Well
Done.
Yeah,
I like that.
But they got Marcellus Williams out of St. John Bosco, who's a really good player. So yeah, they get their wins. I'm just messing
Sure.
up.
And what do they look like when they go to the Big Ten? Like,
Great question.
I don't know either, man. Like either the Big Ten's going to change a little bit of their style, or USC is going to have to figure something out to be a little bit more balanced, I guess. Like it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. That's the one we had up before. Here we go.
Easter 12 Washing Beard, who says, is it unrealistic to expect Notre Dame to have a monopoly on Catholic school high school recruiting? Excuse me. I feel like those should be layups. Layups, I think, is a little bit too in one direction, right? Like I would say this about that. There are untapped markets in the Catholic schools around the country that Notre Dame needs to do a better job of getting into consistently. Like they are doing a good job in certain instances, but they need to be able to tap in more consistently. I would never say it's a layup because there's still going to be kids. Just because you go to a Catholic school does not mean that certain things aren't going to be important to you. Like no kid's created equal is kind of what I'm saying, right? Like my experience as an educator, I've learned that pretty quickly that every kid is different. Every single kid is different.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say it's a layup. I would say that Notre Dame needs to have more success in certain areas, and they should have more success in certain areas.
Sure.
But I would never say layup.
Well, and I would also say, and just to kind of build off your point that no kid is the same, not all kids that go to a Catholic school for high school have the makeup to go to a Catholic school for college. Like that they could be there for completely different reasons than the faith-based education and all of that.
Right.
A lot of these Catholic schools that Beezer is referring to are big-time football factory schools, right? Kids are going to go to those schools because of the football team, not necessarily because of what the school offers. They'll deal with taking a religion class and, doing these different things because it's a Catholic school. They're there for the football. And that's just the reality, right? Like, for example, what's the big school in Nevada that we were just talking about? Bosco, right?
Oh,
right.
Gorman?
Gorman, excuse me. That's a Catholic school, isn't it?
It is?
Yeah.
Yep, Gorman is a Catholic school. Yep.
Kids aren't going there for the Catholic education. I shouldn't say that. Not all the kids are going there for the Catholic education.
Vince, I can't tell you because the last school I coached at for track and field was a Catholic school. And I had more kids that weren't Catholic than were Catholic when I worked there. That
Absolutely.
I coached. And there was I can't tell you how many kids I had that weren't eligible sometimes because they failed religion.
Yeah.
Like you go to a Catholic school, how do you fail religion, man? How is that happening? But that's a different conversation for a different day. But yes, again, that's not a requisite that you have to be Catholic to go to a Catholic school. It's just the private versus public institution type of thing. You know what I mean? Like that's what it comes down to mostly.
Yep, absolutely. So now I also agree with you that Notre Dame needs to do a better job with some of the Catholic school pipelines. There's no doubt about it. But some of those kids just aren't going to fit that profile where Notre Dame is going to have an in guaranteed just by walking through the door. So, just so many different factors, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Absolutely. We had NC Notre Dame fan who says, what team will be the TCU this year? A team that nobody's talking about but can make the playoffs. That's a great question. Man, I mean, one team that I think could be in contention for the division championship, which I guess could be in that conversation, is Washington State. That's a team that I keep pushing for. I mean, 7-6 last year, which is not a great record, but they returned a lot defensively. They returned their quarterback, who's going to be a second-year starter, in Cameron Ward. I think when you look at their schedule last year, they had close losses to Oregon, Utah, and they were playing USC very tough for a long time. So I think that team could win double-digit games and at least be in the contention of the Pac-12 championship, when the season's over, and that would be a little bit of out of nowhere, right? Like 7-6 team to double-digit win team that maybe could win the pack. That would probably be my pick is Washington State. I think they're going to be a sneaky good team in 2023.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the teams that people are talking about are teams that are not perennial playoff type teams too.
Right.
Your Texases, your Penn States, teams like that. Washington, for example, like I know Washington has been to one, but like that was more of an anomaly than anything else, right? So, a lot of these teams that people are talking about, I would be surprised if they made it in, to be honest, because they haven't been there in the past and they haven't proven that they can, sustain that kind of success. So, this playoff could be very interesting, to be honest with you, depending on how the Pac-12 does, beating up on each other, SEC for the same thing, Big Ten for the same thing. What cream is going to rise to the top? Is it going to be the same old, or is there going to be some new blood in there? I tend to fall on the new blood side of things, which I think could be a lot of fun. The last year of the 14 playoff, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think this is going to be a fun year. I'm really looking forward to it. And there's going to be more. Like I'm going to be watching more Pac-12 games, I think, than I've watched in the past, because I think there's going to be some good football played out there.
Pac-12 is maybe the deepest conference up top, in my opinion, as far as teams that could win the conference. I mean, we talked about Utah, that's won the last two, but just spent a lot of time talking about USC. Washington is a very trendy pick, and I think Washington's a very good team. Oregon State is a team that won double-digit games last year that no one talks about. I think Washington State's going to take a massive step forward. Pac-12 is going to be a really entertaining conference, to your point, Vince. I agree.
Absolutely. I do want to throw this one in here just because we were talking about it. NC Notre Dame fan says, if you're not Catholic, does Notre Dame make the players go to Mass? So they go as a team prior to the game. That is a new thing, not new, but it's a tradition that was brought back by Marcus Freeman. As a student, are you forced to go to Mass? No, it's not like some private schools where you have to go to chapel or whatever like that. It's not a thing at Notre Dame. You do have to take religion classes, that sort of deal, but you don't have to go to church. But the team does go to church. And of course, they're not pushing the Catholic faith on people. It's just a time to quietly reflect on things.
You don't have to convert to Catholicism if you don't want to. Right.
Yeah. Right. So it's not like a forced situation, but the team goes together. Like I went to a Catholic high school and not everybody was Catholic, but we had Mass before every game. Like is it 25 minutes, like 25 minutes, like was the express version, that kind of a thing. So, but a lot of guys took advantage of that, just to kind of get their head straight, before the game.
Absolutely. We had Eric Santini, who says, Ryan, do you know if Deuce is staying for the barbecue yet? Eric, I don't envision that happening because he is actually going to Ole Miss on the 29th. So he's visiting Notre Dame on the 27th and he's visiting Ole Miss on the 29th. That is still the schedule, to my knowledge, at this point. I don't think he's canceling the Ole Miss visit. So I expect him to be at Notre Dame from the 27th to the 28th and then go down to Ole Miss from the 29th to the 30th. That's kind of where I look at where that one is at currently. So I don't envision him being there for the cookout barbecue.
All right. We're coming down to the end of the questions that I've got. So if you've got some mailbag questions, go ahead, throw them in. And but if not, we got a couple more to go here.
And this one is from Justin Knox. He says, what is the most difficult position group, not including Caleb Williams, on this year's schedule? Wow, that's a tough one. All right. Let me pull up the schedule real quick, man. That's a great question. So toughest position group, not USC quarterback. I mean, I would say the most talented group is probably Ohio State's defensive line, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of guys coming back. JT Tuimoloau, they have Jack Sawyer coming back, Michael Hall, Tyleik Williams, Hamilton, the other defensive tackle, 58. Like they have depth on the defensive line still, even though they've lost Javonte Jean-Baptiste and a couple of guys from the interior from 2022. But I think Ohio State's defensive line is one that I look for, and I say that's a good group, like it is. Clemson's linebackers, I think, are very good as well. Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter coming back. That's a good group. But I would probably say Ohio State's defensive line is the most talented group coming back this year. Oh,
course,
and the wide, oh man,
There
Ohio
you
State's
go.
wide receiver room. I was completely forgot about that one. Wide receiver room for Ohio State is also very, very good. Yes, Archer. Yes. You have obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka. You have Julian Fleming. You have the freshmen coming in and Cornell Tate and Brandon Innes and Noah Rogers and Bryson Rogers and a lot of really talented players.
All right. Oh, we got a super chat from Justin.
Nice. Justin says, thank you so much for super chat. What are the rules if Davis Andrews commits, then he has to enroll at Notre Dame when he returns from his mission? What are the rules if Davis Andrews commits that he has to enroll at Notre Dame when he returns from a mission? I'm not completely understanding the question.
So basically he's saying if he's, he's in the 25, he's going to graduate in 24, whatever, 25, whatever his graduating class is.
24. Yeah.
24. Okay. So if he commits to Notre Dame, does that mean that now he has to enroll at Notre Dame 2 years from now when he comes back from his mission? Is he signing a letter of intent as a 24 kid, or is it a 26 situation?
He's signing a letter of intent, but I mean, it's so easy to get out of letter of intent now, right? So there's a little bit of a leeway either way, because there's also a chance that, maybe he doesn't want to play football at the end of the 2 years. Like, you never know what's going to happen in 2 years, but I think there is definitely a letter of intent initiating that's going to happen, that he signed at the University of Notre Dame. And then the scholarship just kind of gets put on the back burner for the 2 years until he finally gets on campus. So it's the same regulations. It's a lot easier to get out of national letter of intent today than it once was. But I think that, if he signs his national letter of intent, there is the intent. That's the word there, right? Like, there is intention for him to end up at Notre Dame.
Beautiful. We got a few more here. Let's see. This one will probably be fairly quick.
We had backup who says, is Notre Dame recruiting Cole Leinart? So Cole camped at Notre Dame this summer. He's the quarterback, 2026 modern day. Of course, he is the son of Matt Leinart, former USC great. So are they recruiting him? I mean, they took a look at him, and I'm sure they're going to keep looking at him. He has not been offered by the University of Notre Dame. There's only, I think, 2 or 3 quarterbacks in 2026 that have been offered as of right now, as we currently stand. So, Cole's not even the starter for his team yet, which doesn't always matter, but Elijah Brown's back for his senior year. So Cole Leinart's probably not even going to take over until his junior year of high school, barring an injury happening. So could it happen eventually? It's possible, but I think it's more of a get-to-know-you basis as we are sitting here right now.
All right.
D-Troll Hunter, one day when the last of your kids leaves the house, do you and your wife have a special trip planned or anything like that? My wife and I already know where we are going back to mark the occasion. I haven't thought about this, Vince. I don't know if you...
Wow. Well, you're further away from it, I suppose, than I am. But my youngest is 8, so we still have a ways to go for that one. No, we do not have anything planned out. I have a feeling it's going to sound very quiet around here whenever that is the case, which is very weird. When I go on like business trips or whatever, and I'm in a hotel by myself, like I can't sleep. It's too quiet. Like I don't have like a leg like wrapped around me, and I'm not talking about my wife. Like kids just like everywhere, that kind of thing. And it's like, I can't imagine my life not like that. So we planned some trips. Like I think we're going to go someplace for our 20th anniversary next year, that kind of stuff. But no big trip planned for the day they're all gone, because that's so far away. I have not seen the light at that end of that tunnel yet.
Mine's at least 18 years from now. So yeah, I haven't thought about it either. I think for our 10-year anniversary, which we just got our 6-year wedding anniversary, I think we might do a vow renewal in Alaska is kind of the conversation that we're having right now. So that's the next, well, I'm sure we'll take some trips before then, but that's the next big trip, I guess. But I don't have anything planned for when Juliet and Raina are out of the house or anything yet. No, I don't.
Interesting. Why Alaska? I got to ask. Like
we've always wanted to go to Alaska, specifically Denali National Park in Alaska.
Okay.
That's, I mean, you get to see the northern lights and the wildlife, and we're very like outdoorsy type of people. So like my favorite trip I've ever been on is like Yellowstone National Park out west. Like it was fantastic. So
nice. Okay, cool. I love that. All right. Let's see here. I'm still wrapping my mind around that, but I got to pull up another question. Okay.
Man, American bison's my spirit animal, Vince. So
nice. I dig it, man. I dig it.
Back up says Ryan, who's the next Bosco player to be recruited? So 2024 obviously is over in that regard. 2025, is there any Bosco kids that have been offered in 2025? trying to think if anybody's even been offered in 2025 from Bosco. It's a great question. Let me look through my list real quick. I don't think there's anybody on the top of my head from Bosco. No, he's not a Bosco kid. That's an Orange Lutheran kid. He's not a Bosco kid either. As I work down my list, and this is how you stole on a podcast, by the way. That's a De La Salle kid. That's also not a Bosco kid. I don't think there's any Bosco kids. I don't think there's any Bosco kids in 2025 as of right now. So my answer is I don't know, because I don't think there's any Bosco kids in the 2025 class. Someone said there's a corner. What corner are we talking about there? Corner. No, those are both modern day kids. We both have modern day kids. No, I don't think there's a Bosco kid unless I'm missing someone. So, yeah.
All right.
Sorry. I don't know. 2026 kid, probably. Yeah. I don't know.
We know that's God, those kids just finished their freshman year. Like,
yes. There's already been some offers out in that class, though, which is pretty wild.
That's nuts.
We just talked about Matt Leinert's kid. Raja Bell, who played basketball in the NBA. His son, Dia Bell, is a 2026 quarterback. So, yeah, man, they're coming.
That's unbelievable. Like, my kids' school, they don't even like the varsity coaches don't even know who the freshmen are. Like, they are so separated.
Yes.
Even the kids that are super duper talented, they are on the freshman team, period. You know what I mean? Now, I realize kids can get exposure by going to camps and 7-on-7s and all that. I get all of that. But, like, they're so old school at my kids' high school is like, they don't even know who the freshmen are. You know? Right. They do their own thing. So, it's interesting.
Tavis McKay with the next question says, Notre Dame's future schedule has a lot of SEC opponents, Texas A&M, Florida, and Alabama. Do you think this is affecting recruiting for these upcoming classes?
I only
in
see
a good
that
way,
as affecting it in a good way. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
If they beat a few of those opponents, like if they beat Texas A&M in 2024 and they start playing the Floridas, the Alabamas, and they have some victories, that's only going to help recruiting. It could also hurt recruiting in the sense of like, oh man, the gap's not closing fast enough or that type of thing. So I think potentially it could help a lot though. And it's also an introduction, like, you know, some Alabama kids for the first time. Maybe we're watching Notre Dame football, some Florida kids, some more Texas kids. I think it helps.
Yeah, I think it only helps recruiting because they see that you're playing the big kids. You know, they see you playing the big boys, and the SEC are the quote unquote big boys, right? And it allows them to get down into SEC country and allows kids to see Notre Dame. Yes, Notre Dame plays on national television. I get it, but some of these kids aren't specifically tuning into NBC at 2:30 in the afternoon to watch Notre Dame play. But if a Texas kid sees that they're playing Texas A&M, they're going to watch that game, or Alabama or Florida, you know, all of the above, right? And so I think it only helps Notre Dame to play these teams. Only helps. I don't see how it could hurt unless every time they play an SEC team, they get smoked. Like that's the only way I could see it being a negative, but I see it as being a positive. And I'm glad Notre Dame has started to schedule big time opponents like this. And I say out of conference, but like outside of the normal teams that they play, you know.
Agree. Next one. Oh, we had a super chat from Justin Knox. He said, I can't post it from my phone, but look at our new linebacker commits schedule this season. I know. It's crazy. Let me pull it up real quick. So Modern Day, I believe they have their first 4 games of the season are all out-of-state games, Vince, which is just nutty, dude. Yeah, I mean, so they won the national championship last year. They were 13-1. They beat Modern Day in their rematch. That was the only school that beat them into the 2022 season. So Modern Day this year is playing Centennial. They're playing Bingham, which is South Jordan. Looks like Utah is where they're playing that one. It's a Utah school. They're going to Creekside to play in Georgia. They're playing Kahuku, who is a Hawaii team.
Oh my god!
They're also playing St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, which is another game. Then they start the regular California schedule. They play Servite and St. John Bosco and
my gosh.
Actually, I'm sorry. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I just pulled up Modern Day schedule. Let me go back to St. John Bosco.
Well, okay, hold on. So Modern Day schedule is still pretty friggin' amazing. They're going across the country and to Hawaii.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine the booster money that they must have?
Right. So here it is. So they're playing Liberty, which is the Nevada school first. Then they're going to St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida. Then they're playing Friendship Collegiate Academy, which is a Washington, D.C. team, or a Baltimore team, Baltimore, Maryland. They're also playing Kahuku, who is a Hawaii team. They're also playing them. And then they start their schedule of Rancho Santa Margarita, Servite, Mater Dei, Orange Lutheran, all those good schools. So, yeah, they start off with a bunch of out-of-state schools to start the year.
That's crazy. Holy cow.
Imagine going to Hawaii for a game, man. Like, all right.
Yeah, seriously. But that's like one of the games. Like, that's just nuts. I can't even imagine a high school schedule even looking like that in any way, shape, or form. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
My son's team goes to Indianapolis, and it's like, whoo, that's a road trip, baby. Like, we got to make sure we get the moms to pack some sandwiches, like stuff like that's a 2.5-hour drive. I can't even imagine getting on an airplane and going across the country or going over the Pacific Ocean to a different state.
Going. So you're going to Maryland, you're going to Nevada, You're going to Hawaii. I mean, you're all over the place. I mean, Nevada's close to California, but like
it doesn't matter. That's a different world, man. That's a different world. That's all I'll say to that.
Someone said how much do these coaches make? A lot. So
because all they're doing is coaching football. They're not teaching PE or health class either, most likely. So
yes.
Gosh.
That's all they're doing.
I can't even.
Well, it's funny. I actually looked up St. John Bosco's like a staff directory because I'm trying to get in touch with the coach for a piece, obviously.
Okay.
And literally all he is the football coach. He's not like a PE teacher that's also a football coach or anything like that. Like that's all he does. He's just a football coach. So
that must be nice.
Jason Negro, who's one of the best coaches in the country. So yeah, that's all he does. And
that must be nice. I can't even. All right. Well, here's Zach says I played at Bishop Gorman in 2019, and we went to Hawaii to play St. Louis.
Nice. St. Louis, which is where Jordan Patello went to school. Nick Herbig went to school. So, yeah, St. Louis is a very good school out in Hawaii.
Man, that's just.
Did you win, Zach? Did you win?
Yeah.
That's my.
Seriously, travel to Hawaai and lose. I mean, okay. I'll go.
If he played at Bishop Gorman in 2019, he probably won because Bishop Gorman's been loaded.
Right.
Loaded, so.
No doubt about that. All right, let me pull up another one here. Oh, this is about the current team. This is different. Okay.
Andrew Gilmore says, "Is this the year Maris Loif? Oh, they lost. I'm sorry, Zach. I didn't mean to bring up that bad memory. Then is this the year Maris Loifel takes a major step forward? Is he really good in practice, Vince?"
So. If he doesn't take a big step forward this year, it's never going to happen. Like, can we all agree on that? He needs to, because there's going to be guys breathing down his neck, whether it's JD Bertrand, whether it's Sneed, whether it's Berna, Ziegler, he's going to be pushed. And so is this the year? If you're Maris, it better be. Like, that's the best way I could put it. It has to be. This is his year to do it if it's going to happen, because if it's not, he's going to get passed up. If Notre Dame is going to be the best Notre Dame that they can be, they want him to have this year be his step-up year, that he reaches his ceiling, obviously, because he has the experience. He has all of the things that you would want, but he just hasn't had the consistent production. If he can do that, they're going to be really, really good, right? Is he really good in practice? He was in the fall of 2021. I can tell you that. He was unbelievable. He was a one-man wrecking crew that year before he got hurt. I don't know if he's been good at practice this year because we haven't been to practice yet.
Right.
I'll let you know. How about that? I will let you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
to be determined. TBD.
Yeah. TBD, baby. Good old TBD.
We had Tavis McKay. If you were Notre Dame, what kind of plays are you keeping off film for Ohio State game? I am not... Tavis, I'm not big on like hiding things as much, right? Like there's going to be some trick plays, for instance, that like maybe I'll have in my back pocket. There will be some of my bread and butter plays that maybe I won't show to them, right? Especially like red zone plays, especially, right? Like 2-point plays. Like those are plays where like I might not show it. Like we used to have this one play called double cannon when I was coaching, and it was like that was our play in the red zone. If we needed 2 points, that was the one. So like we wouldn't show that against the bad team on our schedule. We would save that for when the biggest game would come, when we needed it, type of thing. So there's some, but I'm not really in like, super small playbook against these bad teams because I'm trying to save everything. I'm
right.
play your game, baby. Like play your game.
Yeah, the only thing that I would quote unquote save would be like wrinkles off of something that we've been doing consistently in the first 4 games.
Like an
I mean,
adjustment or something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It would be a misdirection from something that we've been doing or something along those lines. It wouldn't be just like, oh, we can't run this. Like look, if you're going up against NC State and you need to score a touchdown to win the game, like everything's on the table. It's not going to be like, well, we can't run that. We're saving that one for the Buckeyes. I'm not a big fan of that kind of a thing. Now, if you're playing a team like Tennessee State, you run your base stuff, and that's fine. You don't have to be totally crazy. But again, I'm not holding stuff back per se. It would just be like anything else. Like, okay, well, we haven't run the wrinkle off of this jet sweep that we've been doing. Now's a good opportunity to do that because we have it on film that we've been doing this and doing this and doing this, and that's what they've seen as well. And so we're going to throw a wrinkle at it and do something a little bit different. So that's how I would approach a big game like Ohio State. You can't go in there with that mindset. It's not going to end well, is what I would say to that.
Yep, agree.
All right. There we go. Boom.
Beezer 12, Watch Beer. I think outside of Georgia and Bama, the SEC is way overrated. Notre Dame would be 11-1 in the East. What do you two think? So let me look up the East real quick.
I was going to say, give me the teams in the East, and I'll let you know.
All right. All right. Ready? Here are the East teams 2022. So starting from the top in the East, Georgia, Tennessee,
okay,
South Carolina, Kentucky, Florida, Missouri, Vanderbilts.
There's some obvious wins in there. And then there's there's a few in there that I would be like 50-50 shot, right? Then I would have to break down some of the matchups and things of that nature, right? Look, can we assume for the sake of this argument and based on history that Notre Dame would lose to Georgia? So is that your one loss right there? And then Tennessee, can they sustain what they were able to do last year? Is Florida really up and coming like they said? Like, there's a lot of questions in there. I'm not guaranteeing an 11-1 final schedule though.
No, not especially not every year. Because I mean, any given year, Kentucky's going to be really good from time to time. Florida's going to be back at some point. There's no doubt. And then you also have the crossover games in the SEC, right? Like you're not just playing SEC East games. Like you're going to play a West team. So whether that's LSU or Alabama, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, there's still a crossover game that's probably going to give you a little bit of trouble. So yeah, I push back. I mean, I think that the SEC is a little bit overrated comparative to what the national perspective is. So I believe with that, but I would say like 11-1. Like I wouldn't just say that's like a foregone conclusion. Like I think that's a little over the top.
Right. All right, Ryan, we're going to finish it up with this one right here from Robert.
Said mailbag. I don't have a question. I just want to end today on a high note and remind everyone that we got KVA, baby.
I mean, what a way to finish it, right? I think that's a great way to finish this thing off. And so thanks everybody for joining us today. We were breaking down the 25, that's crazy. The potential 25 linebacking class, closed down the 24 linebacking class. And then we had an awesome mailbag, and I want to thank everybody. There was some good discussion going on in the chat today. We had to kind of snuff out a little negativity early, but I think it turned positive, baby. And so I appreciate that so very much. So everybody out there in Irish Breakdown land, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, tell your family and friends about us, and hit that notification bell because you never know. We got quite the schedule coming up. I'll be back in a couple of hours with Jesse Stiers. We are going to talk about the Notre Dame offseason and what it's been like. So basically from the start of the new year until today, what has the offseason been like? So we got a lot to talk about there. And then, of course, we got rapid fire. Sean's off all week, so it's going to be me and Jesse bringing you home at night at 6 o'clock every night. Tomorrow, Brian and I are going to be back at 1 o'clock. We are going to be previewing fall camp because fall camp starts Wednesday morning. And 9:30 a.m., we're going to be at camp, and we're going to be at practice, and we're all pumped up about it. Brian will be back. I'm not sure, maybe with you. I'm not sure. 1 o'clock, his observations on camp. Jesse and I will have them at 6. Same thing Thursday and Friday. It's just going to be nutty, folks. It's going to be nutty. I got 8 shows this week, and I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. So for Ryan, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.